Chapter 2952. Xiao Mao was taken aback. He immediately realized that Xiao Hua had nowhere to vent his anger, and wanted to vent it on Yi Yu. He thought for a moment and said, "This guy is the Fu man of the Shibai village. Right now he must be worried about the seeds of the Wu village under the Shibai village. Besides, he must know about the relationship between Big Brother and Huta village. Even if he had 10 times the courage, he wouldn't dare to find trouble with you. Yi Yu deserves to die. Even if he doesn't find trouble with us, we can't let him go," Xiao Hua said with hatred. "Yi Yu will die, but not now." Fairy Hongxia also hated Yi Yu. Now that we have left Million Meng Mountains, and Xiao Hua's reputation in Million Meng Mountains is a bit embarrassing, why don't we talk about it in the future? Yes, with Xiao Mao here, Yi Yu will definitely come. Li Zongbao said calmly. "All right, I'll let him go for now," Xiao Hua said helplessly. Then he looked at Li Zongbao and said, "Senior brother Li, from now on, don't use your kill immortal whip. Wait until this little brother has practiced the refining technique of soul cultivation and healed your injuries." "No problem," Li Zongbao said impatiently. "With you by my side, do I still need to do anything? Don't be so wishy-washy. Let's go back to Liang first." "Yes, I understand." Xiao Hua knew that Li Zongbao was extremely anxious. He looked at Fairy Hongxia and felt the same. The flying boat was like a flowing cloud. In just a few moments, it had flown for over 10 miles. But suddenly, Xiao Hua slapped his forehead and said, "Xiao Mao, stop the flying boat for now. Big Brother forgot something again." "Oh, what is it?" Xiao Mao quickly stopped the airship and asked curiously. "Sai, it's all because of this guy." Xiao Hua took out the storage bag. He shook his hand and the fire ape fell out of the bag. The fire ape landed in the air, and was slightly startled. When it saw the situation around it, it immediately bared its teeth and revealed a ferocious expression. The flames around its body rose and it pounced toward Xiao Hua. "Evil creature," Xiao Hua sneered. He chanted an incantation and pointed his finger. The sun-moon corona on the fire ape's forehead let out a rumbling sound. The fire ape no longer cared about attacking Xiao Hua. It held its head and rolled in the air while howling. Darling Xiao Fairy Hongxia was stunned. She was as confused as Li Zongbao and Xiao Mao. She pointed at the fire ape and asked curiously, What is this?" "This is a fire ape." Xiao Hua knew that this fire ape was related to Xue Xue, so he didn't dare to be careless. He wanted to know why the fire ape came to Million Meng Mountains, and why it found Hamba. He then told Xiao Hua about his encounter with the fire ape, but he didn't tell him about the fire ape and Xue Xue. "Oh, Big Brother, you're asking me to summon Hamba, right?" Xiao Mao understood. "That's right. We've left Millions of Meng Mountains. I'm afraid Hamba won't be able to follow us. If we don't ask now, when will we know?" Xiao Hua nodded. "Big Brother, please wait a moment." Xiao Mao nodded. He closed his eyes and meditated for a moment, then opened his mouth again. "Hamba is currently at a critical juncture in its cultivation, so it won't be able to follow me to the country of Xi. Once it's successful in its cultivation, it will definitely go to Xuanyan sect to look for me. Actually, it won't be too late for Big Brother to ask then." Xiao Hua rolled his eyes again. Nonsense, who knew when Xue Xue would need this fire ape? If he didn't ask now, when would he? Sure enough, in less than 2 hours, an indescribable heat was born in everyone's heart. Their blood was also surging and unstoppable. Hamba had appeared. When Hamba saw the fire ape rolling in pain in midair, it seemed to be angered. Its sharp gaze swept across Xiao Hua, so much so that Xiao Hua could feel an indescribable heat wave around him. Naturally, Xiao Mao could sense Hamba's hostility. He snorted coldly and opened his mouth to scold Hamba. Hamba helplessly shrunk his neck, which was almost gone, and blinked his eyes. On his face, which had already lost its red hair, there was obviously a resentful expression. It was almost the same expression that Xiao Hua had when he faced Elder Wu. Damn it, Xiao Hua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He opened his mouth and said, "Xiao Mao, ask this fire ape what's its relationship with it. How did it come to Millions of Meng Mountains from the country of Xi? Why are you looking for it? If this fire ape is Hamba's man, Big Brother will treat this fire ape well. Once it's finished, I'll set it free." Man? This time, It was Xiao Mao's turn to not know whether to laugh or cry. After thinking for a moment, he shook his head slightly and began to ask Hamba. Hamba's voice was very hoarse. It was impossible to make out any syllables. However, Xiao Mao seemed to be able to understand it, nodding his head from time to time. Big brother, in the end, Xiao Mao smiled and said to Xiao Hua, "Little brother has already asked clearly. This fire ape and Hamba don't have any special relationship. They're just demon beasts that have taken shape. They've met a few times in the past. This fire ape didn't come to millions of Meng Mountains to look for Hamba. It came to look for one of its close relatives. As for what Hamba is, I'm not sure. It just received a message from the fire ape and came to meet it." Ah, before the fire ape was sealed. They knew each other? They can even send messages? Xiao Hua was a little stunned. Furthermore, there's a close relative of the fire ape in millions of Meng Mountains? Damn it, are these demon beasts going to become demons? Big brother, according to what Hamba said, there are indeed demon beasts that have become demons in this world. Xiao Mao smiled and said, "It's said that there are many of them in millions of Meng Mountains. Even Hamba himself said that he's nothing. Some demon beasts can even cultivate into humans. They're no different from ordinary soul scholars." Isn't that so? Suddenly, Xiao Hua thought of that elder Wu he saw in the ancestral shrine of Huta's stockade. He actually had two faces. How could an ordinary person look like that? Maybe he was some kind of demon beast. Forget it. Xiao Hua nodded. With a wave of his hand, he used the universe in the sleeve technique, and once again put the fire ape into his spirit storage pouch. Big brother, is there anything else? If there's nothing else, I'll let Hamba go back. Xiao Mao probed. That Xiao Hua was a little hesitant. He was a little worried about bringing Hamba along. At least with Hamba, this trip to Sword Domain would be a little easier. Xiao Mao seemed to have seen through Xiao Hua's thoughts and hurriedly said, "Big brother, Hamba is now at a critical juncture. If you don't have to use it, then don't use it, right? When it comes to find me, that's the best time to use it." Alright. Xiao Hua naturally only thought of it as draining the pond to catch fish and nodded. After that, Xiao Mao gave Hitorigami a few instructions. Hitorigami actually lowered its head and leaned its head against Xiao Mao's hand, looking extremely strange. Xiao Mao obviously didn't feel good either. He patted Hamba's shoulder, turned his head, and jumped onto the flying boat. Under the urging of his magic power, the flowing cloud flying boat suddenly rose and rushed into the sky. Roar, behind the flying boat. Hamba's hoarse roar could be heard. Sigh, when Xiao Hua heard it, his heart was slightly sour. He understood the misery in Xiao Mao's heart. Although he found his roots in the millions of Meng Mountains, they didn't recognize him at all. The shaman of Shibai village didn't have the slightest intention of letting him recognize his ancestors. In the end, Xiao Mao didn't even know who his father was. Fortunately, in this world, besides Xiao Mao, there was also Hamba. Although Hamba was a demon beast, it also had the bloodline of the Shibai great god. It could be considered a closer relative than Xiao Mao. Xiao Mao didn't dare to look back. He controlled the flowing cloud flying boat and rushed forward like an arrow, afraid that he would turn back if he hesitated. After flying for nearly 2 hours, the flowing cloud flying boat finally slowed down. Looking at Xiao Mao, whose expression had somewhat calmed down, Li Zongbao said indifferently, "You're a cultivator of the Dao sect. Since you entered the Dao sect at a young age, naturally you're fated with the Dao sect. Although soul cultivators are powerful, they've declined. Look at those uncivilized natives. Even if you're their shaman now, how heavy of a burden can you bear? Why don't you focus on cultivating? It won't be too late for you to return to the millions of Meng Mountains after you've achieved great success. Not to mention the current shaman, even the Shaman King might bow down to you. Thank you for your encouragement, Senior Brotherly." Xiao Mao nodded and sighed. "I originally came here to accompany Senior Brother, but I didn't expect that there would be so many troubles. Seeing that my background has already surfaced, I can't do anything even if I don't cultivate diligently. Night Rain already knows my whereabouts, then that nascent soul cultivator will definitely know soon. I can only rely on the merit of the great battle of Dao and Sword, and my Xuanyan school to protect myself." "Io, that's right." Xiao Hua was also greatly shocked. He quickly said, Xiao Mao, if possible, why don't you stay in the millions of Meng Mountains? Stay in the millions of Meng Mountains? Xiao Mao shook his head calmly. Night Rain's influence in the millions of Meng Mountains is definitely no less than Zimming, and I can't possibly stay in the Huta Stockade forever, right? Even if I stay in the Huta Stockade forever, who can guarantee that I won't be schemed against by Night Rain? After all, I'm not Taoist Xiao. What Xiao Mao said makes sense. Fairy Hongxia nodded and said, in the millions of Meng Mountains, Huan Country, and Shi Country, Xuanyan School is still safer. Xiao Mao has the merit of the Great Battle of Dao and Sword, and the Sect Master's special pardon. If Xuanyan School can't even protect him, how can it still be called Xuanyan School? Even if Xiao Mao's enemy is a nascent soul cultivator, he still has to think about his own reputation and the consequences of revealing this matter. Now that the Great Battle of Dao and Sword is happening, a nascent soul cultivator having a connection with a sword cultivator, that's a big deal. In my opinion, within the next 10 years, that nascent soul cultivator won't do anything to Xiao Mao. Li Zongbao also nodded. We can only wait for the Great Battle of Dao and Sword to calm down, then there's a possibility of making a move. And after 10 years, Hamba will have succeeded, and I'm afraid he'll already be guarding by my side. Xiao Mao laughed. Therefore, Big Brother, you don't have to be too worried. Humph, of course Big Brother doesn't have to be worried about you. Xiao Hua sneered. You're my brother, a nascent soul cultivator is nothing. There's no need for Hamba to come, I alone can beat him to the ground. Xiao Hua's words with his gold core cultivation was extremely arrogant, but whether it was Li Zongbao, Fairy Hongxia or Xiao Mao, none of them felt that there was anything wrong with Xiao Hua's words. They were truly convinced by Xiao Hua's methods. Even if Xiao Hua said that he could kill an avatar, they would probably nod their heads blankly. Caw-caw, suddenly, an owl-like voice sounded in the air. Who dares to talk so big? Who dares to kill a nascent soul cultivator? He's just a small gold core cultivator. Aren't you afraid of blowing the sky open? When Xiao Hua heard this, his complexion changed greatly. This voice came too suddenly, and Xiao Hua absolutely did not expect that under the escort of the Huta Stockade's Wu Lao, a spirit warrior would immediately chase after the Wu Lao as soon as he left. His plan to move clouds and rain along the way could be considered a waste. Between shame and anger, Xiao Hua coldly said, a thief who doesn't dare to show himself. I'm afraid you've been chasing after me for a long time, right? Immediately, the Buddha's sense swept behind him, but before Xiao Hua's Buddha's sense could find any trace of the person, several sharp flying sword-like divine senses swept from all sides of the flying boat, firmly locking onto the four people. Only then did Xiao Hua and the others come to their senses, unconsciously turning as white as paper. Half a li away from the flowing cloud-flying boat, four swordsmen appeared in the air. In front of these four swordsmen was a beautiful woman, but her face was as cold as frost. Her face was full of ridicule and astonishment. Who else could it be but Lu Ruochang of the Black Phoenix Sword Sect? In addition to Lu Ruochang, there were 3 other swordsmen, firmly surrounding the flowing cloud-flying boat in a triangular formation. In front of the flowing cloud-flying ship, there was a young swordsman with a robust figure. His 5 strands of beard looked very spirited. However, his pair of sword-like eyes carried a kind of incomparable hatred. He was staring fixedly at Xiao Hua's face as he slowly flew over. Chapter 2953. On the left rear of the flowing cloud-flying ship, there was a female swordsman with a graceful figure. She wore very little clothing, only covering her vital parts. Her exposed bluish-white skin emitted a lustrous sword light. When one's gaze fell on her, a feeling of dizziness involuntarily arose in one's heart. It was as if one didn't even need to look at the female swordsman's appearance to be mesmerized by her sword light. To the right of the flowing cloud-flying ship was an old man. This old man wasn't tall and was a bit fat. His sword clothes were also bulging. However, this old man's bean-sized eyes were flashing with a sharp brilliance. Every time he raised his hand, a fiery red sword light flashed with a thin flame sword intent, as if it could split the void apart. Swordsman transformation. Xiao Hua sensed these sharp sword intents, and immediately identified the cultivation of these 3 swordsmen. Moreover, These 3 swordsmen had restrained their sword intent and successfully concealed their whereabouts. They didn't arouse the sword origin in Xiaohua's body. Needless to say, they were at least second-grade transformation swords, surpassing the Void Heaven Sword School's Shui Ming Cha. Xiaohua saw the appearance of several swordsman transformation swordsmen, and immediately understood that he was their target. He didn't hesitate and left Fairy Hongxia and the others behind. His body was surrounded by lightning, and with a rumbling sound he rushed towards the sky. It was only when he had flown a few dozen feet away that Fairy Hongxia's terrified voice called out, "Darling Xiao, run!" Xiaohua felt a trace of guilt in his heart, but he understood that Li Zongbao, Xiao Mao, and Fairy Hongxia were only at the Foundation establishment realm. Not to mention 3 swordsman transformation swords, they were nothing in LV Ruochang's eyes. As long as he used some method to escape, these 3 people might not be in any trouble. However, Xiaohua's thoughts were just thoughts. Could he escape? "Kaka, you were so arrogant just a moment ago. How come you've become a coward now?" The gloomy voice came from the young swordsman. A huge sword light suddenly shot out from the swordsman's mouth, producing a loud rumbling sound, and rapidly pierced towards Xiaohua's body. This sword light was extremely fast, as if it had instantly streaked across the sky and appeared between Xiaohua's chest and abdomen. Within the snow-white sword light, streaks of ice python-like sword intent slashed towards Xiaohua with their soul-devouring fangs. Xiaohua didn't panic in the slightest. He also slashed with his right hand, and a sword light also appeared. With a boom, it smashed onto the ice-cold sword light. Woo! With a sharp whistling sound, Xiaohua's figure borrowed the sword light to rush into the sky. His speed increased by more than 20%. The young swordsman's complexion turned somewhat unsightly. His mouth issued a sound of astonishment. The sword light around his body suddenly flashed, and a huge sword suddenly appeared. Then he chased after Xiaohua. The strange thing was that after the huge sword flew out for a few dozen meters, it slowly disappeared without any trace of fluctuation or sword qi. How could Xiaohua care about this young swordsman? His figure had just used the lightning escape to rush up another few dozen meters, when a sword intent like the falling of the Milky Way sprinkled down on his head. Admittedly, the strands of rain were like those of an orphan girl, but the desolation within was enough to split the soul. Damn it! Xiaohua couldn't help but curse in his heart. He was already struggling to deal with 1 sword transformation, but the Huan state actually sent out 3 sword transformations. The 3rd sword transformation hadn't even made a move yet. Just 2 sword transformations. He probably couldn't deal with them, right? Go to hell. Xiaohua's heart was filled with hatred. He understood that the matter of his sword transformation cultivation was no longer a secret. The sword light around his body surged, and the sword origin shot out. A huge sword was also slowly born. Inside, 9 flying swords of different sizes were arranged in different shapes. This shape was constantly changing. Even the flying swords within the sword formation turned into shooting stars. Countless tiny hurricanes madly gathered and slashed towards the ice river sword intent. It was like 9 stars transiting the sun. Boom! A loud sound rang out. That unparalleled sword intent was actually torn apart by Xiaohua's huge sword. Below that sword intent, the graceful swordswoman's figure was revealed. However, this swordswoman's face didn't have any astonishment. Instead, it showed a kind of pleasant surprise. Even those big curved eyes contained traces of charm. Looking at Xiaohua's heart sword and the 9 stars within the heart sword, a smile appeared on her dark red lips. She even muttered in a low voice, 9 stars transiting the sun. This guy actually knows 9 stars transiting the sun. It wasn't rough. Except for the execution dream and mountain splitter, Xiaohua's other 7 sword orbs were completely repaired in the sword catacomb. However, they had always been nurtured in the sword scars of his primordial spirit, and hadn't been successful. During the trip to Meng Mountains, Xiaohua once again placed his attention on soul cultivation. That is, when he just activated the execution dream and mountain splitter, he realized that the 9 flying swords were all successful. Xiaohua was overjoyed, but he didn't care too much. He immediately used the 9 stars transiting the sun that he had comprehended countless times in the sword intent. Sure enough, 9 stars transiting the sun was extraordinary. In just one sword strike, it defeated a second-grade sword transformation flying sword. Of course, Xiaohua still didn't have the time to appreciate this graceful swordswoman's charm, nor did he have the time to savor the joy of defeating a second-grade sword transformation flying sword. He didn't even have the time to look at the swordswoman's figure. Before he could escape from the huge sword, he once again activated the lightning evasion and rushed away. Swoosh! Xiaohua flew out another 10 zhang. Seeing that there was a glimmer of hope to escape the encirclement, countless scarlet flames appeared in the space of nearly 100 zhang. Not only were these flames extremely hot, they were also abnormally sharp. The entire sky had become a place of mountains of blades and seas of fire. Xiaohua was not afraid of fire. He coldly snorted in his heart, opened his mouth, and a wisp of spirit fire immediately flew out. Normally, this was his last resort. But now, in order to escape, he couldn't care about anything else. When the spirit fire appeared, under Xiaohua's divine flame art, it immediately turned into a net and rushed in front of the huge sword. Although the sword will of the flame was powerful, and seemed to be able to burn the surrounding space, when it came into contact with the spiritual fire, it was like a snowflake coming into contact with boiling water, instantly melting into the spiritual fire. In the blink of an eye, Xiaohua urged the spiritual fire to rush out of a gap in the fire lake, and was about to break out of the encirclement of the 3 swordsmen. This, what Xue Mingcha said, was true. Under the lake of fire, the old swordsman hadn't transformed into a sword, but his body was surrounded by a fiery sword light. His fiery red eyes revealed a hint of contemplation. This nameless actually has a supreme spirit fire in his hands. While the old swordsman was pondering, the huge sword transformed by Xiaohua had already flown out of the lake of fire. The lightning was shining brightly, and it was flying towards the direction of millions of Meng mountains. But at this moment, above the seemingly clear blue sky, many whirlpools suddenly appeared. These thumb-sized whirlpools didn't even wait for Xiaohua to see clearly, and they immediately emitted a powerful sword energy. Clang! Not allowing Xiaohua to do anything, the sword energy around his body emitted a strong sword cry, as if it was going to come out of his body. Moreover, the huge sword transformed by Xiaohua was also emitting a mournful cry, and the sword light was almost skyrocketing. There's a 4th sword transformation? Xiaohua was shocked. Buzz! The sword energy roared, and all the whirlpools instantly converged to form a huge sword. Wasn't this the young swordsman who fought with Xiaohua for the first time? Invisible sword. Xiaohua suddenly realized. However, he was still shocked by the speed of this young swordsman. He didn't expect that there would always be someone who was faster than him, and that there was someone who could be faster than his lightning evasion. Boom! The young swordsman's huge sword was very close to Xiaohua, and it didn't give Xiaohua any chance to dodge. The 2 huge swords clashed together. A powerful roar was heard, and a powerful hurricane was generated. It was like the wind was sweeping away the clouds, and it was like the gathering of the wind and the clouds, flattening everything in the sky. Even Xiaohua's body, that flame that hadn't been retracted, was swept away. Looking at the 2 huge swords, the young swordsman's majestic body didn't move, and the sword light around him slowly dissipated, revealing a proud face. He coldly stared at Xiaohua, who was falling down from the sky like a falling leaf. Xiaohua seemed to have lost consciousness, falling straight down. His entire body was jolted left and right by the shock waves created by the huge swords, and he looked extremely pitiful. Xiaohua hadn't truly transformed into a sword. Even though he had the sword will of the 9 stars illuminating the sun, he still couldn't defeat a second-grade sword transformation. You've just stepped into the threshold of sword transformation, and you actually dare to compete with me, a real sword transformation swordsman. Didn't Xue Mingcha teach you a lesson? Although the old swordsman sneered sarcastically, his body didn't slow down. Even the graceful female cultivator also stood guard on the other side, to prevent Xiaohua from escaping. She also laughed. Yes, even if you have the sword will of the 9 stars illuminating the sun, you haven't truly stepped into sword transformation, so how can you be my opponent? Xiaohua Fairy Hongxia couldn't help but cry out sorrowfully. Her body flew out from the flowing cloud flying ship, wanting to catch the falling Xiaohua. Xiao Hua flew out from the flowing cloud flying ship until he was struck down by the young swordsman. In just a few moments, Fairy Hongxia and the others didn't have time to react, and Xiao Hua had already flown hundreds of feet away. Now that Fairy Hongxia flew up again, how could she catch up with Xiao Hua? However, when Xiao Hua was still hundreds of feet away from the ground, Fairy Hongxia tried her best to circulate her magic power, wanting to catch Xiao Hua's body before he fell to the ground. Xiao Hua's body suddenly moved, like a stiff snake that had awakened from hibernation. He rushed towards the ground at an extremely fast speed. Ah! Fairy Hongxia suddenly froze, her hand covering her mouth as she stood in midair. Pung! With a loud sound, Xiao Hua's figure abruptly crashed into the solid ground. Although his entire body was flashing with an earthen yellow brilliance, the earth escape technique that he had always been proficient in actually lost its effect at this crucial moment. Solidifying earth into steel? Xiao Hua's face was filled with awkwardness. Looking at the faint glow on the ground and the distant LV Ruochang who was standing steadily in midair, his heart was filled with shock. Sword Cultivator. How did a sword cultivator know that I know the earth escape technique? Chapter 2954. Senior John Doe LV Ruochang was in the distance. He seemed to know that he was no match for John Doe, so he didn't fly closer. With only sarcasm in his tone, he said, "Unexpected things can't be done again and again. Do you think that the swordsmen of my sword domain are all idiots? You have done so many things and my sword domain people do not know?" Xiao Hua saw the three sword transformation swordsmen slowly descend, and behind Lu Ruochang, there were dozens of swordsmen flying out. Although they were not sword transformation swordsmen, they were at least grade 1 or 2 illusory swordsmen. Knowing that it would not be easy to escape today, he sneered and flew towards Fairy Hongxia. As for Xiao Mao, who had just reacted, he hurriedly urged the flowing cloud flying ship to fly in front of the two. "What's wrong? Not boasting anymore?" The young swordsman stood in the air and said indifferently, "With your cultivation, you actually want to kill a nascent soul cultivator? What a joke." However, to be honest, although this old man had estimated your strength, but I still underestimated you. You actually forced this old man to sword transformation swordsman. Xiao Hua sneered and did not speak. However, the young cultivator still said, "It's fine if you don't speak. It can only mean that you have a guilty conscience. But from your words just now, this old man is somewhat puzzled. I wonder if you can dispel this old man's doubts?" "Speak," Xiao Hua replied indifferently. "This old man knows that you are a terrifying phoenix, and also know that you are nameless. I also know that you dare to kill a grade 3 illusory swordsman. I also know that you know the rare earth escape technique among the Dao sect cultivators. But this old man did not expect that you would dare to kill a nascent soul cultivator. This old man wants to ask you, what kind of divine being are you?" "Who am I, don't you already know?" Although Xiao Hua's face was pale and his eyes were spinning rapidly, he still wanted to escape. However, he did not admit defeat and retorted sarcastically, "On the other hand, who are you? One is a grade 3 illusory swordsman, and the other 3 are sword transformation swordsmen. You actually did not care about your face, and trapped us 4 puny foundation establishment cultivators here. Do you still care about your face?" Xiao Hua, you also know about face?" Lu Ruochang sneered. "If you had any sense of shame, how could you mix with foundation establishment cultivators with your nascent soul cultivation base? Ambushing and killing countless warriors of my sword region? Today this sword might as well tell you that your death has arrived." This was Martial Uncle Qin Hung of the Void Heaven Sword School, Senior Martial Brother Qin Jian's master. You tried to kill Senior Brother Qin Jian with your nascent soul cultivation, which is a taboo of the sword domain. Today Senior Uncle Qin Hung is here to avenge Qin Jian. Then Lu Ruochang's finger moved away from the young swordsman and pointed at the old swordsman as he said, "You killed Ling Yunwu, Yuan and her husband, and took the sword pouch of my sword domain. Now Martial Uncle Xue Qindong of the Lingfeng sword sect is also here to avenge the disciples of Sword's Gate." Xiao Hua sneered. "Many swordsmen have died in my hands. If you want to avenge yourselves, you don't have to sign up one by one. Anyway, I know that the sword cultivators of the Hung country bully the weak with numbers. It's not the first time you've encountered such a situation. Hee, the young swordswoman giggled. She was so beautiful that the sword armor on her body was almost scraped off. Little brother, you're quite brave. I like you the most. I'm Feng Suiwu of the Black Phoenix Sword Sect. I heard that the terrifying phoenix in the Dao Sword War was actually a nascent soul nameless, and had the strength of a first-grade sword transformation realm cultivator. I've long been impressed. Now that I've met you, I'm even more impressed. You even have the 9 stars soaring sun sword intent. If little brother is interested in joining my sword domain, I can recommend myself to help little brother reach the divine sword realm. At this moment, Qin Hung frowned and reminded, Feng Suiwu, the 9 stars soaring sun sword sect's secret technique. I know little brother Xiao is willing. Feng Suiwu glanced at Xiao Hua in an extremely charming manner and smiled. I'm not afraid of the flame bamboo sword sect. What can others do about our love? Formless sword as expected. Xiao Hua's gaze swept across the crowd. He knew in his heart that there was no chance of survival today. He couldn't help but feel anxious. When he heard Feng Suiwu's teasing, he licked his lips and said with a smile, Isite, old witch, how old are you? You're actually still thinking about this, young master? Isn't the legend of an old cow eating young grass exactly like this? Hee, Feng Suiwu actually didn't get angry. She smiled and said, I'm an old witch. How can you be worse? You're drooling over Fairy Hongxia's youth and beauty. Isn't that the same as an old cow eating young grass? Good little brother, just submit to this concubine. As long as you tell the whole story and reveal your identity, won't you be able to fly away with me? And this Fairy Hongxia, I can also treat her as a little sister. Not to mention how many good little sisters you have. Even if you have more, I won't care. Don't you like the 9 stars transit? How about I and my 8 sisters transit the sun together? Bob Fairy Hongxia's face turned red. She spat and cursed, Old witch. Bitch, Feng Suiwu sneered. She flicked her finger, and an ice flower pierced towards Fairy Hongxia. Xiao Hua didn't dare to be negligent. He waved his hand, and the wishful staff struck out. With a pung sound, it hit the ice flower. The ice flower turned into fragments, and the moment it fell, it once again rushed towards Fairy Hongxia. Humph! Fairy Hongxia hurriedly waved the phoenix command in her hand, and a 5-colored brilliance fell in front of her body. Puff 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 puff, a series of sounds rang out. The fragments hit the brilliance and instantly shattered the defensive brilliance. Fortunately, those sword lights were shattered by Xiao Hua, and after passing through the defense of the Phoenix token, by the time they reached Fairy Hongxia's body, they were unable to break through her protective brilliance, and fell from the sky one after another. Little girl, Feng Suiwu said coldly, don't think that you can block this sword intent. This sword was only afraid of hurting little brother Zhao's heart, so I didn't go all out. Fairy Hongxia muttered a few words, but in the end, she didn't say anything. Obviously, against a second-grade sword transformation realm swordsman, she really didn't have the strength to fight back. Nameless Qin Hung said faintly, Sword friend Feng is right. You have my sword domain sword energy, so why did you sneak into the country of Xi's Imperial Thunder Sect? Which sword sect of my sword domain are you a disciple of? As long as you tell us the reason, we will definitely not make things difficult for you. In fact, we will even assist you. Have you ever seen a sword cultivator's disciple with a nascent soul realm cultivation? Have you ever seen a sword cultivator's disciple kill a sword cultivator? Xiao Hua said coldly. Besides Qin Jian's life, Ling Yunwu's and Yuan's lives, won't you all pursue it? And the lives of these few Dao sect disciples. It's precisely because Senior Nameless has the nascent soul realm cultivation of the Dao sect, and my sword domain's sword transformation realm cultivation, that our sword domain's sword transformation realm senior treats you so well. Lu Ruochang chuckled and said, Isn't a sword transformation realm swordsman who can control the country of Xi's Imperial Thunder Sect more important than the entire Sky Patrol City? Sky Patrol City? Xiao Hua raised his eyebrows and said coldly, I'm afraid that Sky Patrol City is already heavily guarded by our Dao sect disciples. If you all attack. Speaking of this, Xiao Hua was suddenly shocked and knew that he couldn't continue. If he said too much, he might expose Wuxia. Oh. Senior Nameless actually knows that Sky Patrol City is the target of our sword domain's battle? Lu Ruochang was naturally stunned, but then he smiled and said, to be able to see this point in such a complicated battle situation, Senior Nameless is indeed amazing. If that's the case, our sword domain will have to invite Senior Nameless back. Furthermore, I've also revealed to you that even if the Dao Sect's cultivators manage to find out about the sword domain's goal, the Sky Patrol City will still fall into the hands of the sword domain. There will be no change at all. Well, if you follow us back, you might be able to see how the warriors of our sword domain will attack Sky Patrol City. I'm not going. Xiao Hua didn't believe Lu Ruochang's words. He had already sent the message to the Imperial Thunder Sect. He didn't believe that such an important piece of news would not be taken seriously by the nascent Soul Realm Masters in the meeting hall. Moreover, he originally wanted to go through with it. However, looking at Qin Jian's master and Ling Yunwu's senior uncle, how could he back down? Senior Nameless, you don't have to worry. Our sword domain accepts all kinds of cultivators. Not only do we have beast cultivators, weapon cultivators, bird cultivators, and soul cultivators. The one who set up the soul formation in the sword tomb that day was a soul warrior from Meng Mountain. Naturally, this soul warrior has something to do with our sword domain. Since our sword domain can accommodate a soul warrior, why can't we accommodate a mere cultivator? Lu Ruochang persuaded again. Besides, in your 3 kingdoms, there are more than thousands of cultivators who have submitted to our sword domain. One more Senior Nameless won't make much of a difference. Why do you care? Hee, I'm afraid none of those thousands of cultivators are in the nascent soul realm, right? Xiao Hua said coldly. Since one more won't make much of a difference, one less won't make much of a difference either. If I submit today, I'm afraid my path of cultivation has come to an end. Moreover, how can I give up on my fellow disciples? Xiao Hua understood that if Lu Ruochang and the others attacked him, Fairy Hongxia and the others would have a chance to live. However, if he submitted, Fairy Hongxia and the others would definitely die. Good little brother, don't tell me you don't want to live anymore? Feng Suiwu smiled tenderly. Don't you want to take pity on me? Old witch. Xiao Hua scolded coldly, not wanting to say a word more. Now that things have come to this, we can only take action. Xue Chendong, who had not spoken until now, waved his hand faintly and said, I've said it before. Unless we capture this guy and search his soul, it's impossible to know his background. LV Ruochang also sighed. A living Nameless Hua was much more valuable than a dead Xiao Hua. A lively Nameless Hua was naturally much more useful than a demented Xiao Hua. However, if they captured him, it might not be impossible for them to turn the situation around. Chapter 2955. Wung Wung Wung, 3 sword cries shook the heavens and the earth. 3 giant swords gradually emerged from the bodies of the 3 second-grade swordsmen. The crisscrossing sword energy had already sealed the space around Xiao Hua and the others. The biting cold sword energy absorbed a huge amount of spiritual energy from the heavens and the earth and hovered in the air. How do we escape? Xiao Hua was very anxious, but the surrounding area was sealed by the sword energy. He was really helpless. Spiritual fire? Wishful staff. Overturning sea seal? Nascent soul hand? Xiao Hua thought of many methods, but they seemed to be ineffective. Fight Xiao Hua clapped his hands and was about to use the nascent soul hand. Hee, it's really lively. At this critical moment, a young voice came from the stern of the flowing cloud airship. When did the swordsman of Sword Domain become so bold, causing trouble at the doorstep of Meng Mountain? Say, Senior? Hearing this, Xiao Hua saw the familiar figure of Huta Stockade's elder Wu. He almost couldn't believe his eyes and stammered. Where did this soul warrior come from? Qin Heng and the others had already transformed into swords, but they still couldn't sense the cultivation of this young man. It was as if a person in the void revealed a shadow. While they were shocked, they shouted, This is a dispute between Sword Domain and Dao Sect cultivators. It has nothing to do with Meng Mountain soul warriors. If you have nothing else to do, please dodge. If my flying swords hurt you, it will affect the relationship between Sword Domain and Meng Mountain. Haha, when did Meng Mountain have feelings for sword domain? Elder Wu laughed and pointed at Qin Heng. This old man remembers that you should be the disciple of Void Heaven Sword School's old Qin. Has old Qin stepped into the Spirit Sword sect? Ah. When Qin Heng heard this, the sword's radiance shook violently. It was obvious that he was shocked. Rumble, 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 rumble. The sound of the sword resonated again. Qin Heng's sword flashed again, and the entire sword suddenly disappeared. Qin Heng actually wanted to run away at this moment. If Qin Heng wanted to leave, how could Feng Suiwu and Xue Chendong stay? Both of them had the same thought. Sword energy overflowed from their bodies, and in the blink of an eye, they flew dozens of feet away. Hee, don't you think it's too late to leave now? Old Wu chuckled and did not chase after him. Instead, he extended his hand and a pitch-black spirit treasure strangely appeared in mid-air. Lost Soul Lamp. Seeing the familiar Lost Soul Lamp, Xiaohua's eyes lit up. Woo woo woo, strange witchcraft curses came out from Elder Wu's mouth, and turned into a dark green color that landed on the soul-extinguishing lamp. The soul-extinguishing lamp, which was originally the size of a bean, suddenly shone with a bright green light. It shot up into the sky at an extremely fast speed, and in an instant, it illuminated an area of several hundred feet. Poof! Elder Wu spat out again, and a faint, tiny green seal script fell into the light. Pung! There was an explosive sound, as if the wick of the lamp had exploded. 3 dark green lights flew out from the wick of the lamp. The flow of the lights could not be seen at all, and in the next moment, they appeared on top of the giant sword formed by Qin Heng, Xue Chendong, and Feng Suiwu, who were flying in 3 different directions. Wu others might not be able to see it clearly, but Xiaohua's sharp senses allowed him to detect that when the 3 green lights appeared, there was a ghostly shriek in the nearby void. The entire horizon was suffused with strands of black gas, and each and every one of them was a strange ghostly head. Using the lost soul extinguishing lamp actually caused a celestial phenomenon. Xiaohua sighed inwardly, because he could even see the faint rolling thunder and fierce winds in the horizon. When the 3 lights fell on the giant sword, the 3 previously arrogant second-grade sword transformation stage swordsmen immediately froze in midair. They could not get out of the sword's body, nor could they fly even half an inch. An obscure, dry, and incomparably majestic sigh came from the lost soul extinguishing lamp. It was actually the same sigh as the Huta great god when the lost soul extinguishing lamp was lit. Along with this sigh, the entire world suddenly became bright and dim. Even Xiaohua was startled, as if something had happened in this world, but also as if nothing had happened. The black gas and ghost heads froze, and the heavenly thunder and fierce winds also froze. Woof! At the lost soul extinguishing lamp, a soul-stirring bark sounded, and the entire space was stirred up by a strong storm. A burst of light and shadow swayed. The green light rolled back, and the black gas dispersed. Even the rolling thunder in the sky quickly subsided. Looking at the 3 giant swords again, they fell straight from midair. Obviously, the 3 second-grade sword transformation stage swordsmen had been killed by Elder Wu in an instant. This lost soul extinguishing lamp is too powerful, isn't it? Xiaohua was really stunned. Not to mention him, Xiao Mao and the others, as well as all the swordsmen, were stupefied on the spot. This unforeseen event seemed to be even more inconceivable than when Xiaohua rushed into the sky to escape, and was intercepted by the 3 sword transformation stage swordsmen. Scram! Elder Wu withdrew his hand, and the entire green light converged into his hand. The lost soul extinguishing lamp also disappeared. All the swordsmen seemed to still be in a daze, and simply did not understand what Elder Wu was saying. After a few breaths, only then did the clever swordsmen wake up. How could they dare to stay here for a moment longer? They urged the flying generals under their feet to flee in panic. Someone moved, and the remaining people naturally woke up and hurriedly fled. LV Ruochang hesitated for a moment. Just as he was about to fly towards the giant sword transformed from the 3 swords, he heard Venerable Wu's cold voice again. Leave the flying swords behind. Xiaohua is my little friend. It's disrespectful to me for you to intercept him. These 3 flying swords are the compensation. How could Lu Ruochang dare to disobey? He shrunk his neck and hurriedly flew away without looking back. Senior, seeing all the swordsmen flee, Xiaohua couldn't help but give a thumbs up and sighed. Junior only knew that he had the empty fort strategy, but I didn't expect Senior to have a secret plan. You've actually been following behind this Junior all this time. If I didn't follow behind, how would I know that someone was still gossiping behind me? Do you think I'm the kind of person who doesn't keep his word? Elder Wu's face was cold. He waved his hand and a few jade slips were thrown onto the flying boat. This is the bullshit cultivation method you wanted. Take it yourself. Don't. Since it was like this, what else could Xiaohua say? He could only thicken his face and endure the heat. With a wave of his hand, he once again picked up the jade slips and respectfully handed them to Elder Wu. He smiled apologetically. Junior was in a hurry. Hee. How could Junior be as far-sighted as Senior? I thought. You thought I would be greedy for your things. Elder Wu didn't take the jade slips and said coldly. No, Xiaohua smiled apologetically. Junior didn't expect that Senior would actually want to lure the snake out of its hole and give the sword cultivators and the others a warning. That's why I concealed myself. Junior now truly understands Senior's love for fists. Now that Senior has saved our lives, how could Junior still have the face to take Senior's things? Junior definitely can't accept these things. Junior thanks Senior for saving our lives. Xiao Mao and the others didn't dare to hesitate and hurriedly knelt on the ground. Elder Wu's kindness was indeed great. Elder Wu looked at the four of them and snorted coldly. He reached out his hand and took the jade slips and said indifferently, "Get up. I naturally have my reasons for sending you all out." Yes, Junior only knows now. Xiaohua hurriedly smiled apologetically. Furthermore, these so-called earth, heaven, and saint class cultivation techniques are just nonsense made up by your Dao sect cultivators. What use do you have for these cultivation techniques? Then Venerable Wu continued. Even all the soul cultivation techniques in Ming Mountains are based on the Green Seal script. Now that you have understood the pronunciation of the Green Seal script and the witchcraft incantation, all you need to do is to understand the Green Seal script one by one. That will be the most basic soul cultivation technique. Isn't that much stronger than any other soul cultivation technique? Yes, Junior didn't know about this, right? Senior said it. Junior only knows now. Xiaohua was shocked and smiled apologetically. But it said that there are 365 Green Seal scripts. Where would Junior find them? How would I know? Elder Wu rolled his eyes and said indifferently. I only know that soul scholars can learn 50 Green Seal scripts every day in the 6 days of the soul. Shamans can learn 20 Green Seal scripts every day in the 3 days of the soul. As for the remaining 5, I don't even know where to find them. Of course, this is only a possibility. No one would dare to waste their life essence to compete with the essence of heaven and earth. Yes, Junior thanks Senior. Xiaohua naturally knew that Elder Wu was giving him pointers. While feeling grateful, he bowed and saluted. Also Elder Wu hesitated for a moment and said, this time in Shaman King's stronghold. The Shaman King suddenly said that these 365 Green Seal scripts are the essence of heaven and earth. But outside of this essence of heaven and earth, there are 7 other essences that cannot be contained by heaven and earth. If someone is fated to obtain them, I'm afraid that they will transcend this heaven and earth. Ah? Xiaohua was stunned. This Green Seal script has so many things to pay attention to. The soul cultivation techniques of Ming Mountains far surpass your Taoist sect. Elder Wu said coldly. What I said is only the most basic. How could a kid like you know the other secrets? Elder Wu slapped his hand again and took out a bone and threw it in front of Xiaohua, saying, Take it, this is what you want. It's been hard for you to help the people of Ming Mountains all this time. What is this? Xiaohua was stunned. Didn't Senior say that the soul cultivation techniques can't be passed to outsiders? You asked Junior to be loyal. You've been using witchcraft curses all this time. And you even asked G-Man for the inheritance of Confucian cultivators. No matter if it's us soul cultivators or Confucian cultivators, we are both the great enemies of your Taoist sect. Aren't you afraid of being found out by others? You've been acting like this in front of me. Is it just for the sake of a saint-level cultivation technique? Elder Wu sneered. This is a soul technique used by us soul cultivators to conceal and protect the soul. Consider it your reward for helping us all this time. Xiaohua blinked his eyes. He really wanted to cry and laugh in his heart. He really didn't have such thoughts. But since Elder Wu had already said so, and had even taken out a spirit technique, how could he reject it? He rolled his eyes and smiled apologetically. Senior is indeed astute. Junior's little thoughts have been guessed by Senior. Chapter 2956. How old are you? In front of this old man, you're just a child. At this point, Old Wu didn't say anything else. He waved his hand and a jade slip fell onto the flowing cloud airship. This is the route from Meng Mountains to the country of Xi. Although the people of Sword Domain won't dare to stop you, it's not without danger. This route is safe. After he finished speaking, Old Wu's figure disappeared again. Thank you, Senior. Xiaohua was overjoyed and bowed towards the sky. In addition, your rejuvenation pill. If you still have it, you can give one to Hamba. This thing is very useful for the transformation of a soul beast. Haha. Maybe that drought demon took the rejuvenation pill and became a charming and beautiful lady. Old Wu's voice suddenly came from far away, but in the eyes of Xiaohua and the others, it seemed close at hand. Hiss. Xiaohua didn't pay attention to Old Wu's words, but he was really surprised that Old Wu could fly so far in an instant. The path of cultivation in this world is really strange. I thought that the lightning escape technique of the Imperial Thunder Sect was already very wonderful, but today, not to mention that Qin Hung of the Void Heaven Sword School was able to catch up to me. Old Wu flew so far in an instant. This is far from what I can compare with. Light escape, a light escape, when will I be able to master it? When Xiaohua woke up from his shock, he turned to Xiao Mao and asked, Xiao Mao, what does Old Wu mean? He should know that I don't have any more rejuvenation pills, right? At this time, Xiao Mao's face was as red as a big red cloth. His eyes were wandering as he whispered, how would I know what Old Wu is talking about? However, Xiaohua looked at Xiao Mao's expression, then looked at Fairy Hongxia and Li Zongbao who couldn't help laughing. He suddenly understood. Hamba's extremely exaggerated figure, if she was really beautiful, then what kind of taste would that be? Old Wu. He's actually this old and dirty. Xiaohua was immediately happy. He really didn't expect that the usually serious Old Wu had this side to him. Forget it. Forget it. Xiaohua flew out of the flowing cloud flying boat with a smile and said, you think about how to deal with your Qin Jian. I'm going to get the compensation for my hurt heart. That's right, Red Cloud. Take a look at this jade slip with Senior Brother Li and plan how we're going to return to the state of Xi. Big Brother Xiao Mao's face burned even more. It was nothing serious to begin with, but Elder Wu's sudden words made it seem like he was having an affair with Hitorigami. Xiaohua smiled as he left. Not long after, he returned with the 3 illusory sword grade 2 swordsmen. Looking at the 3 people, he asked, who wants these 3 flying swords? And their storage pouches? Hee, that's the compensation for your hurt heart. Why would we want that? Li Zongbao chuckled as he sat down cross-legged, and then he withdrew the immortal slaughter whip and said, with this treasure, I'm satisfied with my life. Red Cloud Fairy and Xiao Mao naturally didn't want it. Xiaohua didn't stand on ceremony and accepted it. Looking at the jade slip in Red Cloud Fairy's hand, he asked, is the route given by Elder Wu suitable? Red Cloud Fairy smiled and said, this is a secret passage. It's a shortcut from the Million Meng Mountains to the 3 kingdoms of cultivators. It must be used by the Million Meng Mountain spirit warriors. Elder Wu's thoughts, really don't treat Xiaohua as an outsider. Yeah, who are we to Huta Stockade? Xiaohua smiled and said casually. But after he finished speaking, he saw the slyness in Red Cloud Fairy's narrowed eyes, and that thought-provoking smile. He hurriedly explained, no. Xiao Big Brother, you don't have to explain. Xiao Mao interrupted. There's no point in saying more. If there is, there is. If there isn't, there isn't. What's the use of explaining? Damn it, Xiaohua scolded. It's all because of your Hitorigami. After I refine the rejuvenation pill, I won't give you half a pill. Oh right, you still have a mission. As he said that, Xiaohua took out a storage pouch and threw it to Xiao Mao. This is the remaining spiritual seeds. When you're driving the airship, find a suitable place and scatter some. Big brother, you can't order me around like this, right? Xiao Mao looked at the spiritual seeds in the storage pouch and stomped his feet. There are so many spiritual seeds. How long do I have to scatter them? Hee, you're the messenger of Hu, great god. Xiaohua laughed. If you're not the one doing this job, who else can do it? Hurry up and fly, we're still waiting to return to the country of Xi. Yes, I'll drive the airship right away. Xiao Mao smiled bitterly and looked at Red Cloud Fairy. Senior sister, even if you want me to drive the airship, you should at least tell me where I'm flying to, right? I can't possibly break into the sword domain again, right? Hee, Red Cloud Fairy rolled her eyes at Xiaohua and looked at the jade scroll cautiously. She pointed in another direction and said, fly there. Yes. I guarantee that under senior sister's command, the direction is correct. Xiao Mao replied in a loud and clear voice. He urged the flying boat to soar into the sky and charged in the direction that Fairy Hongxia had pointed out. Hee, it's finally easy. Xiaohua heaved a sigh of relief and looked towards the direction the airship was heading towards. It was a piece of ice field, and there was no direction to refer to. Darling Xiao, how's your spiritual will? Red Cloud Fairy kept her smile and asked with concern. Hee, Xiaohua slapped his forehead and released his spiritual will. A strong pressure rushed out like a storm. In the golden core? Facing such a vast spiritual will and that strong pressure, Red Cloud Fairy, who was in the late stage of foundation establishment, could not help but groan and ask in shock. My spiritual will has not recovered by 40%. However, it's no longer a problem. Xiaohua looked at Red Cloud Fairy's increasingly beautiful smile and replied. And in the process of recovery, my spiritual will was restored after it was broken. I have benefited a lot from it. When my spiritual will is fully recovered, it will be 30% stronger than before. As for the pressure, even if I meet a nascent soul cultivator again, I will not be afraid. You can even do that? Li Zongbao was also shocked by Xiaohua's pressure, and was a little dumbfounded. If that's the case, I also want to be injured by hit origami. This you have to ask Xiao Mao. Xiaohua smiled and retracted his spiritual will and pressure. Up to you. As long as senior brother Li is willing, I can summon hit origami here right now. Xiao Mao drove the airship and replied. Just like what happened with the fire ape. Sai, I don't have any secret techniques. Better not. Li Zongbao shrugged. Don't go for wool and come home shorn, Io. That's not right. That's not right. Suddenly, Xiaohua shouted and hurriedly said. Elder Wu's words are definitely not that simple. I seem to have understood something. Oh? What's wrong? Xiao Mao did not go to the soul refining cave, and had never seen Master Qin Qin. He was not very clear about the night sacrifice and asked curiously. That's right, that's right. Li Zongbao also suddenly understood and stood up from the airship. Elder Wu mentioned the rejuvenation pill for no reason, as if to remind us. Xiaohua held his chin with his hand and looked at the millions of Meng mountains behind the airship. Indeed. It seems that Elder Wu is also very concerned about Master Qin Qin's death. How can he not be concerned? Master Qin Qin repaired the soul lamp of Huta's stockade. Speaking of which, she died for the inheritance of Huta's stockade. Fairy Hongxia heard this and was a little sad. That is to say, Elder Wu suspects that a spirit beast that was preparing to transform took away the rejuvenation pill from Master Qin Qin. However, Elder Wu does not know who this spirit beast is. Xiaohua frowned and said, however, the strange thing is if it was a spirit beast that could transform into a human form and kill Master Qin Qin, whose cultivation is comparable to the late gold core stage, and is close to the nascent soul stage, why didn't it attack us? After all, we have always been with Master Qin Qin. We were only absent during the period when Master Qin Qin was killed. Thinking about how she had always been coveted by a spirit beast that had transformed into a human form, Fairy Hongxia shrunk her neck and felt a lingering fear. This can only be discussed in the future. Li Zongbao shook his head and said, our cultivation is not enough to deal with a spirit beast that has transformed into a human form. Even with Elder Wu's divine ability, you can't find this spirit beast, so I'm afraid we can't do it. Yes. This should be the only regret of our trip to Ming Mountains. Xiao Hua was disappointed, and Master Qin Qin's short figure, ferocious face, and broad chest unconsciously appeared in his mind. Sometimes it's more than that. Xiao Hua sighed as he looked at Ming Mountains getting farther and farther away. Under the miraculous hands of Reverend Xiao Hua, the crisis of millions of Ming Mountains had gradually subsided. Gradually, the peace and tranquility were restored. Meanwhile, Xiao He had been brought away from the ancestral hall of Hutu Stockade by Xiao Hua, and the millions of soul warriors of Ming Mountains would no longer intrude into the territory of Huan Kingdom to search for Zhang Xiaohua, who did not exist. The battle between soul warriors and swordsmen had come to an end. The greatest contributor had returned to Shi Kingdom through the secret passage of soul cultivators, and did not go to Celestial City. What about the sword battle between swordsmen and soul cultivators? Now it had reached the most critical stage. The towering Celestial City was still standing in the snowy region like a huge fortress. The snow and ice around it were still unmelted, quietly shining a dazzling white under the sunlight. Today was a rare sunny day in the snowy plateau. The pale white sun was hanging in the sky without any clouds, and the azure sky looked like a boundless green pond hanging upside down in the sky. Under the clear sky, Sage Xueyu was sitting leisurely on a cushion in the quiet city lord's mansion. A small red furnace was burning in the air in front of him. There was a fist-sized emerald green teapot on top of the furnace, and it made gurgling sounds as it was being licked by the red flames. Along with the sound, wisps of white smoke spurted out from the teapot's spout. This white gas was very strange. It didn't disappear like normal water vapor. Instead, it was like a long snake slithering in the air. There was a lot of white gas, and the whole teapot's surroundings looked like a dense fairyland. This white gas was the spiritual energy that the teapot breathed in and out. Chapter 2957. Hiss! Master Xueyu opened his mouth. Countless streams of white smoke turned into a thick white chain and rushed into his mouth. Gurgle, like the sound of a teapot. Master Xueyu's stomach was also growling. Then 2 streams of turbid air came out of his nostrils. Fu Xueyu Master let out a deep breath, and a mysterious smile appeared on his face. Clearly, he was enjoying the tightness. This cloud mist tea, ordinary people only know how to brew it with spring water to satisfy their cravings. Even if it's the spiritual energy in the spirit tea, what benefit can it bring to cultivation? Who would know? If we use innate true water to evaporate this energy, not only will it be able to purify the energy, it will also be able to neutralize the innate true water. Using this innate true water for cultivation is a very rare technique for cultivators with water physique. Sage Xueyu muttered to himself. To be able to enjoy life like this at such a time, and to be able to cultivate while enjoying it, even if you asked me to be the sect master, I wouldn't be willing. As Daoist Xueyu smiled, the white mist surrounded the teapot again. Just as Daoist Xueyu was about to open his mouth to take a sip, the corner of his right eye suddenly twitched. Then the slender white eyebrows above his right eye suddenly trembled for no reason. Xueyu's face was filled with shock. Why is that? Could it be some sort of warning sign? Master Xueyu closed his eyes for a moment, as if he was trying to comprehend something. However, a moment later he opened his eyes and said, "It seems there is nothing to worry about. Although my Sky Patrol City is the focal point of the Great Dao Sword War, the Sky Patrol City is the main focus of the war. But now the Great War of Dao and Sword has spread across the borders of the country of Xi, the country of Lian, and the country of Huan. Without the Sword Tomb, my Sky Patrol City's role is reduced. Cultivators can occupy a large territory of the country of Lian, so who would care about a small place like my Sky Patrol City? Moreover, it's fine if sword cultivators don't come to Sky Patrol City, but if they do, won't they fall into the trap of the 3 kingdoms? Perhaps it's because of Ai's cultivation." Just as Sage Xueyu was deep in thought, a sharp cry like that of an eagle rang out in the sky above Sky Patrol City. Not good. Sage Xueyu's expression changed when he heard the eagle's cry. He stood up from the futon in disbelief and exclaimed, "Who dares to trigger the snow eagle alarm in the Sky Patrol City?" Master Xueyu flew up from the praying mat and waved his sleeve. Whether it was the red clay stove or the emerald green teapot, They both fell into his sleeve and disappeared without a trace. Before Master Shui could reach the entrance of the hall, the door silently opened. Master Shui's divine sense swept out like a waterfall. His Shui true master gasped when he saw what was happening 100 miles away from Sky Patrol City. These sword cultivators, where did they come from? At this moment, the sky was no longer as blue and boundless as before. Although the tragic sun was still stuck in the sky, there were still many dark clouds in the surroundings. These dark clouds were like thin strands, but they were like waves, surging rapidly. Accompanied by the dark clouds was a howling cold wind. The cold wind was so harsh that it seemed as if it was going to blow Sky Patrol City into the sky. Just as the wind and clouds were surging, Master Shui's divine sense saw that the sky 100 miles away from Sky Patrol City was filled with sword cultivators. They were densely packed like locusts. Moreover, looking at the dense mass of sword cultivators, who knew how many sword cultivators were behind them? How could Master Shui not be stunned? An unknown number of sword cultivators were flying over on their swords. Each of them released their sword chi. The soaring sword chi rushed straight into the sky, disrupting the weather. What was special was that all the flying swords were emitting a powerful sword hum, faintly resonating with each other, and faintly laughing arrogantly. That kind of invincible and heaven-shaking momentum made even Master Shui, who was a nascent soul cultivator, feel his heart pounding. At this moment, before Master Shui could expand his divine sense with the help of Sky Patrol City's array, there was a loud clang, and an even more arrogant sword chi rushed into the sky from behind the sword cultivators. All the flying swords emitted a sorrowful cry. A powerful divine sense swept over like the flying swords, and Master Shui's divine sense was immediately hit by it. His third-grade swordsman. Master Shui gasped again. His divine sense was instantly shattered by the sword chi. How could Master Shui not know that this was the appearance of a sword cultivator? His face turned pale. He did not dare to continue probing with his divine sense. He quickly withdrew it and looked in another direction. This time, Master Shui was much more obedient. He only briefly checked before withdrawing his divine sense and looking in another two directions. As Sage Shui had expected, he scanned the outside of Sky Patrol City with his divine thought. Among the swordsmen on all sides, there were powerful sword essences. Obviously, these swordsmen were going to surround Sky Patrol City. Just as Master Shui was shocked, several divine senses that were even more powerful than Master Shui's divine sense rushed out from Sky Patrol City and patrolled around like Master Shui. These divine intents seemed to have a tacit understanding as they all searched in different directions. However, just like Master Shui, the moment their divine intents touched the sword cultivators, they were all injured by the sword cultivators and were forced to withdraw their divine intents. City Lord Justice Shui's spiritual master stood in front of the palace door with a pale face, bewildered. Jin Kung, whose face was also pale, rushed over and shouted in a panicked tone. Bad news, bad news. Master Shui had already made a decision. Seeing Jin Kung so panicked, he snorted and said calmly, even when the mountain collapsed, your expression did not change. Even when the enemy was at the city gates, your spirit did not waver. Jin Kung, if even you are so panicked, what will happen to the disciples of Sky Patrol City? Phew. Jin Kung took a deep breath and barely suppressed his panic. He said anxiously, I know I was wrong. However, today's situation is beyond my expectations. I don't know how to deal with it. Easy. Master Shui said coldly. The first thing is to activate the city defense formation of Sky Patrol City. Secondly, send a distress signal to the cultivators of the three kingdoms. Lastly, stop the teleportation formation to prevent the sword cultivators from using it to attack Sky Patrol City. Yes, I know all of this. Jin Kung nodded and said, I have already informed the city guards to adjust the city defense formation to the Snow Eagle level. All the disciples guarding the city are in position. Also, I have already issued an order to mobilize the disciples of the two sects to the four sides of the city gates and prepare to face the enemy. However, from what I can see, this Snow Eagle level defense can only withstand the first wave of attacks from sword cultivators. If you want to withstand the illusory sword and sword transformation level, then you have to activate the formation to the Snow Peak level. Then, you have to ask the City Lord to personally issue a City Lord order. As for the distress signal, Jin Kung smiled bitterly and said, I just received a message from the patrolling disciples outside the city. I wanted to send the signal through the teleportation formations that are not fixed. However, I found that all the teleportation formations, whether they are fixed or not, cannot be used at all. Ah! Master Xueyu was stunned. However, this subordinate still followed the City Lord's instructions and sealed the teleportation array. Jin Kung was a little relieved when he said this. How serious is the situation? Master Xueyu had already seen the situation outside Sky Patrol City, but he still asked. Jin Kung replied, according to the patrolling disciples of my Sky Patrol City, who were 100 miles away, Sword Cultivator disciples suddenly appeared 100 miles away from the Sky Patrol City. They could not tell where these sword cultivators came from. Moreover, there were so many of them that they could not see clearly. These sword cultivators did not attack the patrolling disciples and allowed them to fly back to Sky Patrol City. According to the patrolling disciples, the sword cultivators besieging the city have cultivations ranging from pregnant sword to bright sword. There are so many of them. As for the illusory sword and bright sword that cannot be detected, there are about 20% of them. Have the patrolling disciples returned? Master Xueyu pursed his lips and looked into the distance. He seemed to be dissatisfied with the situation and asked again. Governor, 80% of them have returned. There are still about 200 people who have not returned. Jin Kung said solemnly. I'm afraid they have already died. About 200 people. Not all of them have died. Perhaps about 10% of them escaped the encirclement. Master Xueyu said faintly. Yes. Jin Kung nodded. There is also Miss Li and the others who are in charge of the teleportation formation. They should be able to escape the encirclement of these sword cultivators. It will not be long before the cultivators of Dao sect come to their rescue from all over Huan country. Perhaps. Master Xueyu narrowed his eyes and a cold light flashed across his eyes. These sword cultivators have made such a big fuss and let the patrolling disciples go. It is obvious that they want to catch us off guard and take down Sky Patrol City in one go. This was beyond my expectations, but at the same time, it wasn't beyond my expectations. Although I have made preparations and even the cultivators of the Three Kingdoms have made preparations, it is obvious that there are too many sword cultivators. We still have to fight to the death. Facing the calm immortal Xueyu, Jin King's mood also calmed down. He snorted coldly and said, I have read the ancient books in the city. Back then, my ancestor of the city Lord of Xueyu, with the cultivation of the middle stage of the nascent soul stage, used the snow wave ice wave formation to protect the city to block the attack of 5 swordsmen at the late stage of the sword transformation stage. Although there are many sword cultivators, I am afraid they are just a motley crew. As he spoke, 4 powerful divine senses swept over. At the same time, 4 figures flew out from the same direction and landed in the sky above the city governor's mansion. Master Xueyu did not dare to be negligent. He waved his hand and a city governor's token landed in front of Jin Kung. He ordered, Go pass on my city governor's token. Activate the Great Ice Wave Formation. When the time is right, I will personally take charge of the Great Ice Wave Formation. Kill those sword transformation swordsmen in front of Sky Patrol City. Chapter 2958. Yes, I understand. Jin Kung received the order and hurried out. Xueyu's spiritual master flew up to greet them. Junior brother Xueyu, a clear voice said in shock. Why did the sword cultivators suddenly appear outside Sky Patrol City? Why didn't my Dao sect disciples react? Xueyu's spiritual master looked indifferent. He looked at Miyu from Imperial Thunder sect and said with a smile, Isn't the arrival of the sword cultivators exactly what we want? It's fine if they don't come, but if they do, they'll definitely be defeated by our Sky Patrol City. Didn't they fall into our trap? Ha ha ha, that's right. An extremely arrogant voice said. I've said it before, our Imperial Thunder sect's message has always been accurate. Zhu Qinghe, that little brat, didn't believe me. Now that the sword cultivator is here, this Dao sword war will end in our hands. The credit of defending the Sky Patrol City and killing Huajian will fall on the heads of the Thunder-controlling sect, Sky Patrol City, and Mo Sang Mountain. The voice belonged to none other than Quangtian's spiritual master. As mentioned earlier, Xiaohua told Qian Diheng that the sword cultivator's target was Sky Patrol City, through Jiuxia. However, under Zhu Qinghe's analysis, Sun Yunzi and the others did not take it seriously. Instead, they thought it was a trap set by the sword cultivators. Quangtian's spiritual master was furious and challenged Zhu Qinghe on the spot. He wanted to pull the Imperial Thunder Sect disciples back to Sky Patrol City, to prevent the sword cultivator's sneak attack. Zhu Qinghe naturally went with the flow. He asked Sun Yunzi to agree to the Imperial Thunder Sect's request to fight, and let the Imperial Thunder Sect disciples return to Sky Patrol City. Quangtian's spiritual master was not as good as Zhu Qinghe in terms of scheming, but he believed in Xiaohua's message and the defensive formation of Sky Patrol City. In particular, if the sword cultivators really wanted to attack Sky Patrol City, the Imperial Thunder Sect would have to make a new contribution in the Great War of Dao Sword. Of course, Quangtian had another plan in mind. If Xiaohua's message was wrong, and the sword cultivator's target was not the Celestial City, then wouldn't the Imperial Thunder Sect disciples be able to survive the Great Dao Sword battle by hiding in the city? To minimize the casualties of the Imperial Thunder Sect? When he first came to Sentry City, Crazy Heaven was still a little nervous. From time to time, he would contact Reverend Miyu to come to Reverend Shueyu's City Lord Mansion to check the battle reports. However, as time passed, those sword cultivators seemed to have forgotten about Sky Patrol City, and had no intention of attacking it at all. Quangtian also became lazy and only meditated in the encampment every day, waiting for the end of the Great Battle of Dao Sword. He did not expect to encounter a large-scale attack by sword cultivators today. However, Quangtian only panicked for a moment before he calmed down again. He understood that no matter the outcome of the battle in Sky Patrol City, the Imperial Thunder Sect and Xiaohua's contributions would not escape. He could even make a false accusation. Moreover, Sky Patrol City was originally a trap set up by Zhu Qinghe and the others. Quangtian, Spiritual Master Miyu, and the other disciples of the Thunder Control Sect returned to Sky Patrol City in secret, and would not let the sword cultivators know. Apart from the disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect, there were also 2 early-stage nascent soul cultivators from Mo Sang Mountain, perfected Qin Yan and perfected Lao Yun, as well as many disciples of Mo Sang Mountain. Haha, Quangtian is right. Reverend Shueyu also laughed. And the credit should go to Xiaohua who sent the message. After the battle, I will have to thank him properly. Well said, well said. Quangtian knew what Reverend Shueyu was thinking and smiled widely. Senior Brother Miyu, Senior Brother Qin Yan, and Senior Brother Lao Yun. Reverend Shueyu looked at the other 3 and said seriously, Ice cultivation is shallow and cannot compare to the previous City Lord. I will have to rely on you for this battle. Spiritual Master Miyu had always felt that there was a grudge between the Thunder Control Sect and Sky Patrol City, because of Tu Hong and Dui Qiming's dual cultivation. Therefore, Reverend Shueyu did not want the Thunder Control Sect to be stationed in Sky Patrol City. However, now that the situation was critical and both sides had to join hands to face the enemy, she smiled faintly and said, Junior Brother Shueyu, don't worry. Now that you are in charge and we are just assistants, we will do our best to resist the sword cultivators. That's right. The 2 nascent soul cultivators from Mo Sang Mountain nodded. We have already discussed the city defense array with Reverend Shueyu. If the sword cultivators attack, we will fight the enemy together. Good, Reverend Shueyu clapped his hands and said, I have already issued the City Lord's order. The Snow and Ice Waves array will be activated immediately. I feel that the sword cultivators have gathered so many troops to besiege the Sky Patrol City. They are prepared to attack with all their might. If the attack fails, they will definitely retreat. Otherwise, when the army of our Taoist sect cultivators surround them from the outside, they will be defeated. Hee, Quangtian laughed again. Before I came to Sky Patrol City, I heard from Sun Yunzi that there are a few fellow cultivators lying in ambush near Sky Patrol City. Now they have probably received the news and are rushing here to help. In fact, we only need to withstand the first wave of attack from the sword cultivators, and the situation will be set. Ah, there is such a thing? Why don't I know about it? Reverend Shuiyu was stunned. Don't say that fellow cultivator doesn't know. On the day I came to Sky Patrol City, if I hadn't forced him, the little bastard from Su Yen faction would not have spat. Kuang Tian snorted coldly. They are all playing tricks. How can we compete with them? Sai, no matter what, I have to thank the Imperial Thunder Sect and Mo Sang Mountain. Reverend Shuiyu sighed slightly and bowed. Boom, boom. Boom. Reverend Shuiyu's words were drowned out by a loud roar. The sound came from all sides of Sky Patrol City, and was abnormally fierce. Accompanied by the roar, countless sword chi soared into the sky. Not only did it tear the dark clouds apart, it also cut the cold wind apart. At the spot where the dark clouds had shattered, snowflakes that looked like bird feathers slowly fell. The previously sunny and warm Sky Patrol City was now shrouded in gloom and tragedy in an instant. The sword cultivators attacked just like that? Reverend Kuang Tian was stunned. Of course, the sword cultivators appeared out of nowhere. When they arrived at Sky Patrol City, they had to organize their troops. How could they start the battle so hastily? Reverend Shuiyu bit his lips slightly when he saw how flustered the sword cultivators were. He waved his hand and said, "Fellow cultivators, let's go and take a look. Perhaps the sword cultivators are at the end of their rope." Before Reverend Miyu and the others followed Reverend Shuiyu into the sky, and approached the edge of Sky Patrol City. Another series of sounds was heard. These sounds were similar to the sound of sword humming. Although it was not as sharp as the sword humming, it was still a continuous sound. On the city walls around Sky Patrol City, thousands of rays of light shot out like fountains. These rays of light also rushed into the air, stirring up the surrounding heaven and earth spiritual chi, and meeting the sword cultivators' oppressive sword light. Rumble. Rumble. Countless explosions sounded one after another, and the entire Sky Patrol City seemed to be trembling. Cold winds blew everywhere and snowflakes flew backward. Everything between heaven and earth was in a mess. In this chaos, streaks of blood began to appear from the places where the rays of light and sword light collided. The swordsmen who rushed at the front began to fall under the city-guarding formation of Sky Patrol City. Reverend Shuiyu's anxiety faded when he saw that the sword cultivators were already very close to Sky Patrol City. They lined up neatly and attacked the city-guarding formation in an orderly manner. It seems the sword cultivators came prepared. Reverend Kuang Tian looked at Reverend Miyu and said in a low voice, "They're not just passing by in a hurry." "Nonsense," Reverend Miyu said coldly. "If they were just passing by in a hurry, would those swordsmen be able to follow them?" Reverend Miyu was obviously unhappy with Reverend Kuang Tian for bringing the Imperial Thunder Sect disciples into Sky Patrol City. "Senior Brother Miyu," Reverend Shuiyu chuckled and said, "It's because the sword cultivators came prepared that I am not afraid." "Oh," Reverend Miyu said curiously, "even though my Taoist sect cultivators have set up a big pocket outside Sky Patrol City, and are waiting for the sword cultivators to enter, the process of tightening the pocket is also the most difficult process. I would be a little worried if there were only the disciples of Sky Patrol City." Reverend Shuiyu pointed at the rays of light and said with a smile, "But with the disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect and Mo Sang Mountain, the city-guarding formation of Sky Patrol City is several times stronger. It's impossible to defeat it with just these sword cultivators." Then he pointed with a heroic spirit and said, "As for those third-grade sword cultivators, I won't hide it from you. I can take on 3 of them by myself. With the 4 of you attacking, a dozen third-grade sword cultivators may not be able to take down Sky Patrol City. Is Sky Patrol City's city-guarding formation of Sky Patrol City is so powerful?" Reverend Qing Yen of Mo Sang Mountain gasped and said, "Hee, if not, how could Sky Patrol City stand outside the sword tomb for so long?" Reverend Shuiyu said confidently, "But I'm afraid the sword cultivators will also set up a sword formation." Kuang Tian said again, "I heard that the teleportation formation of Sky Patrol City was cut off. This sword formation must be very powerful, right?" Reverend Shuiyu's expression changed slightly. He did not tell the four of them that the teleportation formation was cut off because he was afraid that they would be afraid. He did not expect Kuang Tian to find out. It's okay, Reverend Shui, you did not care at all. No matter how powerful the sword formation is, we can hold on for a few days. Once the other cultivators surround the sword cultivators from the outside, we can attack from the inside and defeat the sword cultivators. Sky Patrol City will be the final battle of our Taoist sect cultivators. This was the second time Reverend Shui Yu said this. It seemed that he was really confident that he could defeat the third-grade sword cultivators in Sky Patrol City. Chapter 2959. Woo! The soft sound of the sword rang out again. It was like the sound of a flute in the midst of chaos. It was cool and sharp, piercing into everyone's ears from dozens of miles away from Sky Patrol City. Sage Shuiyu and the others' hearts skipped a beat. Before they could spread out their divine thought, similar sword sounds were heard from the other three sides of Sky Patrol City. Then in the distance, behind the colorful sword lights, a faint green light emerged from the ground and slowly flew up into the sky. There before Sage Shuiyu could see the green light clearly, Sage Miyu was shocked again. Another green light appeared from her finger and rose to the left of everyone. Although it was far away, the green light was as bright as a meteor and was not obscured by the sword lights and the brilliance of the array. The other two sides must be there too. Sage Shuiyu did not look back. The other two sides were too far away and could not be seen. Sure enough, in less than half a cup of tea's time, 5 pillars of green light shot straight up into the sky. The 5 pillars of green light were like 5 green bamboos. They were extremely proud and tall, as if they were going to pierce through the sky. This is Sage Shuiyu was puzzled. Could it be that they are going to break through the city with just these 5 pillars? However, at this moment, a rumbling sound rang out from the ground of Sky Patrol City. The entire city was shaking. Following the rumbling sound, layers of white light appeared out of thin air in midair. These light threads were like floating catkins in the sky, growing larger and larger. In just a moment, the catkins were like goose feathers, covering the entire sky above Sky Patrol City. The thick brilliance was like the snow on a snowy region, stacking layer upon layer. The snow and ice wave array of Sky Patrol City had been brewing for such a long time, and was only activated now. Sage Shuiyu smiled when he saw the formation being activated. He waved his hand and a white light flashed. Above everyone's head, the 5 green lights gradually converged into one point in the sky above Sky Patrol City. As soon as the 5 green lights gathered, they immediately emitted an extremely bright brilliance. This brilliance was as strong as the sun, but it was immediately annihilated. However, where the brilliance fell, 5 spiraling green lights intertwined and rapidly spiraled toward Sky Patrol City. What kind of formation is this? It's actually made of 5 flying swords? Reverend Laoyan of the Mozong Mountains said curiously. Judging from the formation, it seems to be somewhat similar to the 10 Directions Annihilation formation. Who cares what sword formation it is? We can't let them set it up so easily. After that, Taoist Master Shuiyu flew up into the sky. He pointed with his finger, and a wave of light rushed out from the great ice wave array towards the sword array in the sky. Haha! Little Shuiyu, don't you think it's too late to stop me now? A loud laugh came from the crowd of sword cultivators. A red-faced third-grade sword transformation swordsman also soared into the sky. With a wave of his hand, a sword light like a gurgling stream rushed towards the light that was as cold as ice and snow. This swordsman was Sword Master Chong Taishu of the Void Heaven Sword School. There was a loud boom. Although Chong Taishu's sword light looked slow, it was very close in an instant. It hit Master Shui's attack. The small stream of light was able to shatter the mountain-like snow wave. We're here too. More than 10 swordsmen who had transformed into swords flew out from all sides of Sky Patrol City and surrounded Sky Patrol City. Damn it! Are you kidding me? Crazy Heaven was a little panicked at this time. Why are all these swordsmen in Sky Patrol City? Aren't they in the country of Shi and the country of Lian? Xiaohua, you've got me in trouble. At this time, Crazy Heaven was still thinking about Xiaohua. He didn't know if this was a good thing or a bad thing for Xiaohua. But how could Crazy Heaven have time to think? Sage Xueyu shouted. Fellow Taoists, please enter the array. Our success or failure depends on this. If we win, we'll be recorded in the Tao Sect's records. Bullshit. Crazy Heaven cursed in his heart. Even if I'm not in Sky Patrol City, I'll still be recorded in the records. Who cares about the records in your Sky Patrol City? Besides, if I lose my life, what's the point of being recorded in the records? But now he had no choice but to listen to Sage Xueyu's command. Sage Miyu glared at him, and the four of them flew in different directions. Not to mention Taoist Crazed Heaven, and the others who were controlling the Great Ice Wave Formation. When Taoist Xueyu saw the four of them fly away, waves of magic power surged out from the formation, and he was filled with fighting spirit. He knew that his Sky Patrolling City relied on the formation of snow and ice waves. He had invested a lot of crystal stones in this formation every year. In order to protect the Sky Patrolling City during the Taoist Sword War, all the crystal stones obtained by the Sky Patrolling City were piled up in the formation. This huge investment had long strengthened the strength of the Defender formation. He firmly believed that he would not be afraid even if there were 2 more third-grade swordsmen, let alone Chong Taishu. Old man Chong, Sage Xueyu patted his forehead and spat out a fist-sized magic bead from his mouth. It was Sage Xueyu's magic treasure, Icy Beauty Bead. The moment the bead landed in the formation, a blue pillar of light that was as thick as a thumb and several feet long appeared. When the pillar of light entered the formation, it transformed into a giant palm that was several hundred feet large. Soon after, the ice-like light rushed into the palm, causing the light on the palm to become even more solid. The entire palm quickly expanded until it was half a mu in size. Zhang Yanzong, come and help me. Chong Taishu's eyes narrowed as he looked at the giant hand formed by the ice pearl, and said coldly. Yes, a rough reply came and a bald old man flew over. It was the vice sword master of the Xian sword sect, Zhang Yanzong. Hee. Even if there are 2 sword transformation realm swordsmen, why should I be afraid? Sage Xueyu coldly snorted and patted his forehead again. A dharma that looked like the hand of a nascent soul appeared. This dharma rushed into the array and merged with the light from the icy beauty bead. With a woo sound, the giant hand flew toward Chong Taishu and Zhang Yanzong. Woo woo woo, sounds similar to the wails of ghosts and howls of wolves could be heard from the gaps between the fingers of the giant hand formed by the icy beauty beads. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth within 100 feet of the hand was sucked dry, and a solid sealing force was produced from the palm. At the same time, it enveloped the space within 100 feet. Inside the space, strands of ice continued to form. Chong Taishu and Zhang Yanzong didn't move, but they were already surrounded by ice. Hee, if it was anything else, the swordsman of my sword domain would be afraid, but this ice? What a joke. Take a look at this old man's methods. Chong Taishu coldly laughed. Although the ice was like sharp thorns, he was a grade 3 sword transformation realm swordsman. His entire body was the body of the sword, so the ice couldn't touch him. Instead, the light pierced through the ice like thorns. Wang, as Chong Taishu finished speaking, Zhang Yanzong and Chong Taishu both turned into swords at the same time. The huge flying sword suddenly streaked across the sky, slashing towards the huge hand and the snow and ice wave formation. Boom, with a loud sound, the 2 giant swords slashed down even faster than normal swords and hit the giant hand formed by the icy beauty bead. With a kacha sound, all the ice was shattered. Half of the giant hand was shattered and the light from the icy beauty bead dimmed. Woo, with a long cry like a tsunami, the snow domain sage was already prepared and once again activated the giant hand. Several rays of light shot out from the giant hand and smashed down toward Zhang Yanzong and Chong Taishu's giant swords. Hee, Zhang Yanzong's cold laughter came from the sword shadow. The giant sword suddenly exploded and turned into a thunderbolt that smashed into the ocean of light. At the same time, Wang with a loud sword cry, Chong Taishu's giant sword slowly raised its head from the array. It was like a giant dragon coming out of the sea. Countless rays of light scattered in all directions. With a boom, it fell down like a waterfall. The sword light was so heavy and the sword light was so sharp that even a mountain would bow down before it. Even a river would be cut off by this giant sword. The giant sword that Chong Taishu had transformed into flashed in the sky, and an unparalleled sharpness filled the space of several hundred feet. In this space, not only was sword light flashing and sword chi crisscrossing, even the sword intent revealed was awe-inspiring. Everything in the space was torn to pieces, and the snowflakes that were floating in the air disappeared without a trace. Woo! A deafening sword cry suddenly rose up, and then there was silence. The entire world seemed to have stopped. The Snow Domain sage's eyes were filled with that sword light. The sword light was like lightning and like a rainbow. It flashed through the air, and slashed down on the giant hand formed by the icy beauty bead. Almost without a doubt, the giant hand was instantly split in half. However, the moment the giant hand was split apart, the entire formation emitted a powerful roar. Countless rays of light immediately gushed out from the giant hand like a raging storm, wrapping around the giant hand like a wave of the sea. The giant sword slashed down for more than 100 feet, and could not go any further. However, in the blink of an eye, the sword cry moved forward again. Just as the shadow of the giant sword had yet to dissipate, 5 more sword lights surged out and slashed down one after another. Boom, boom, boom. Seemingly endless explosions were produced under the huge sword. The snow and ice waves that had been raised earlier were suddenly lifted high up into the air, reaching tens of feet high. Moreover, the area of effect was extremely wide, probably more than 1 mu. The entire sky above Sky Patrol City was filled with sword light and snow light. Chapter 2960. At this time, Zhang Yenzong had already retreated. Although he did not get out of the giant sword, his smiling expression could be seen in the sword light. He knew that Chong Taishu did not ask him to break the formation together. Instead, the two of them joined forces to explore the power of the Sky Patrol City's formation. The other swordsmen who were fighting in the distance did the same. Of course, these swordsmen also planned to use up the formation's spirit stones. However, they also knew that the Sky Patrol City had several spirit veins and there must be a lot of spirit stones stored in the city. However, it would take months for them to use up all the spirit stones. Behind the swordsmen, there would be Taoist sect cultivators who would come to their rescue. They had to take down the Sky Patrol City before these cultivators arrived. Otherwise, they would be attacked from the back as Master Shuiyu had said. Clang, with a loud sound, the thousands of sword light converged like fireflies. It was the giant sword in the snow light. Chong Taishu got out of the giant sword with a calm expression. His eyes narrowed slightly as he looked down at the 1 mu area below him. The brilliance was still surging there, rising and falling in an unstable manner. However, every time there was a wave, the area that was scattered by the sword light would close up again. In less than half a cup of tea's time, the entire formation was restored. The ice pearl gradually bulged in the formation again, and a big hand was gradually formed. Under the big hand, the brilliance gradually faded and revealed the pale-faced Master Shuiyu in the formation. Although he looked a little weak, his bright eyes were full of joy and excitement. Obviously, the Sky Patrol City's formation was worthy of its reputation. He was only an early nascent soul stage cultivator, but he was able to fight 2 swordsmen to a draw with the formation and magic weapon. Boom 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 behind Master Shuiyu, there was a series of loud roars. It was Master Quangtian and Master Miyu from the Imperial Thunder Sect, and Master Qing Yan, and Master Lao Yun from the Mo Sang Mountain, who were fighting with the other swordsmen. Ha 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 ha, it's indeed the legendary snow and ice wave formation. Chong Taishu threw his head back and laughed. He was not angry at being blocked by an early nascent soul stage cultivator. He said, "My sword domain has always said that the Sky Patrol City is unbreakable. Every time we attack the country of Shi, we will suffer at the hands of the Sky Patrol City. This great ice wave formation really lives up to its reputation." Humph. Even though Master Shui had managed to block the attacks of the 2 swordsmen, he had also lost a lot of energy. While secretly adjusting his breathing, he snorted coldly. "Since you know the power of my Sky Patrol City, you should stay in Huan Country obediently. Don't covet the 3 cultivation countries. If any of the Dao sect's major sects were to get angry, the sword cultivators of Huan Country wouldn't be able to resist. This poor Daoist advises you to return to Huan Country as soon as possible. That is your territory." Ha 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 ha. Chong Taishu laughed out loud once again. He looked up at the sky, at the azure sky, and said, "Then let this old man see how angry your Tao sect is. Let the flames of fury burn even more fiercely." Master Xue bit his lip and looked up at the sky as well. At this time, the 5 spiraling green lights had completely disappeared. The sky above Sky Patrol City was as clear as the sky before the sword cultivator's attack. Apart from the absence of the pale winter sun and the absence of floating clouds, the sky above Sky Patrol City was clear. Of course, if these damned sword cultivators were not around, it would be exactly the same as before. Unfortunately, this was just a fantasy. Immortal Xue Yu had an unknown premonition in his heart, and a sense of heaviness gradually grew in his heart. Chong Taishi was too calm, and the 5 green lights from before were too strange. The sword formation that completely surrounded Sky Patrol City must be very powerful. Furthermore, the fact that the sword formation had not been activated for a long time only magnified the fear in Master Xue's heart. Rumble! Suddenly the entire Sky Patrol City trembled violently. This tremor was much stronger than the one caused by the Great Ice Wave formation. Master Xue was now one with the formation, and could feel the entire Sky Patrol City trembling. What kind of sword formation is this? Master Xue was shocked. Before he could think further, a suffocating aura that could destroy heaven and earth surged from all sides of the Sky Patrol City, and enveloped Master Xue completely. This is the seal of my true path sect. Master Xue was absolutely shocked this time. Ha ha ha, Chong Taishu seemed to have sensed the aura of the entire heaven's single azure light array. He raised his head and laughed loudly. Little Xue Yu, today, I will show you the power of my sword domain's single azure light array. I will also let you know that your Dao Sect's array is nothing in front of my sword cultivator's sword array. Chong Taishu's body was covered in sword light as he shot up into the sky. As he flew up, 4 other sword lights flew out from the other 4 directions. They were Cheng Minghua from the Bright Sword Sect, Qi Liandia from the Black Phoenix Sword Sect, Zuoming from the Lingfeng Sword Sect, and Ruo Tian from the Skyscraper Sword Sect. As Chong Taishu shot up into the sky, the sword light around him was as dazzling as the sun. What was special was that Ruo Tian and the others in the other 4 directions also transformed into swords at the same time. 5 soaring sword essences rushed into the sky azure light formation. As the powerful sword hums were heard, all the flying swords outside the Sky Patrol City rushed up into the sky. Countless flying swords cried out, as if they were bowing to a supreme being. Whoop! 5 sword cries sounded as if they were one. Where the 5 sword lights were pointing, another 5 green lights fell. When the green lights arrived above the 5 giant swords, the 5 giant swords trembled and showed signs of collapsing. Chong Taishi, Ruo Tian, Cheng Minghua, Qi Liandai, and Zuoming could no longer maintain their swords form. One by one, they broke out from the giant swords. However, Chong Taishu's red face emitted a faint blue radiance. Without any surprise, he reached out his hand and grabbed the green light. An extremely ordinary green flying sword appeared in his hand. Apart from a pure green light flowing on the flying sword, there was nothing special about this flying sword. Similarly, Ruo Tian, Cheng Minghua, Qi Liandai and Zuoming's faces flashed red, green, yellow and silver respectively. They each held a green flying sword in their hands. Woo! It sounded like the wind and also like thunder. The 5 of them were in 5 different parts of the Sky Patrol City. They calmly waved the 5 green light swords in their hands. At first, there was no movement at all. However, after a while, an endless hurricane was born from the 5 green light swords. There was also a faint sound of thunder coming from the void. All the spiritual energy of heaven and earth near the Sky Patrol City was completely absorbed by the 5 green light swords. Even the snow and ice wave formation that covered the Sky Patrol City was set off huge snow waves. It was like a calm sea being stirred up by a hurricane. An uncontrollable feeling of powerlessness arose in the heart of Sage Xue Yu. Seeing that the Sky Patrol City's formation was about to collapse before the 5 green light swords attacked, how could Sage Xue Yu dare to be careless? Almost without any hesitation, he snorted coldly and slapped his forehead. A baby that looked like Sage Xue Yu appeared on top of his head. This baby was holding a fist-sized ice pearl in its hands. As for the nascent soul, it was wearing a pocket-sized spirit armor. The spirit armor was dotted with greenish-purple ice crystals, and was overflowing with treasure light. It was clearly an excellent defensive treasure. Sage Xueyu took out his nascent soul. The nascent soul didn't fly far, and sat cross-legged on top of his head. The ice pearl in its hand emitted a beam of light that rushed into the formation. Then the nascent soul waved its two fat hands, and a series of seals rushed into the formation, and the ice pearl. As the light flashed, the entire formation seemed to gradually calm down. However, it only lasted for a few breaths of time before the lightning-like green light hit the snow wave that rushed into the sky. The snow wave was like a void in the green light. There was no resistance at all as it slashed into the formation. Bzz, Sage Xueyu's nascent soul suddenly stood up on top of his head and grabbed with its hand. The ice pearl immediately turned into a giant fist, and rushed toward the green light swords with a roar. Boom! Countless green lights and beams of light scattered. The green light swords hit the fist and the entire green light sword stopped in midair. However, at this moment, the green light sword suddenly elongated and rushed to the center of Sky Patrol City. There, the sword lights of the 5 green light swords converged, and the 5 green light swords revealed a ferocious look. An unparalleled sharpness and an irresistible sword intent followed the 5 connected azure light swords as they fell. Crack, 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 a series of cracking sounds could be heard coming from the fist formed by the ice pearl. In an instant, the entire fist was covered in cracks. With a loud bang, the fist suddenly collapsed. Thousands of light beams shot out from the fist, and the snow fell like a falling tide. When the light faded away, the ice pearl that had been split into 6 pieces was floating in the air. Not only that, even after the green light shattered the ice pearl, it did not stop descending. Buzz, 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 a loud rumbling sound rang out like a dragon raising its head. In an instant it disappeared. All the snow-like brilliance was split into 6 pieces by the green light, and shattered after a slight vibration. Damn it! Sage Xueyu's nascent soul was already standing on top of his head. At this moment, silver blood was flowing out from the corner of his mouth. He cursed angrily and his 2 small hands madly formed seals. Countless lights flashed, and the snow wave formation shone brightly again. At the same time, a deafening sound could be heard and the scattered lights gradually gathered together again. Sage Xueyu found it hard to believe that Chong Taishu and the others could destroy the defensive formation that he had built for tens of thousands of years with just a single sword formation. Unfortunately, reality slapped Sage Xueyu in the face. When the 5 green light swords fell, they crisscrossed and formed a giant green spider web. The power of the green light swords did not weaken because of the spider web. Countless loud noises could be heard in the sky above the Sky Patrol City. The entire formation's snow wave was suppressed by the green spider web. Chapter 2961. Oh no! Seeing the green light that was only a few dozen feet away from him, Master Xueyu could feel the weakness of the snow and ice wave formation. A sense of fear that he had never felt before rose from the bottom of his heart. His nascent soul's body sank a bit, and was about to retreat back into his body, but when it was halfway through, the green light sword had already reached his head. The distance of a few dozen feet was covered in a flash, and the snow and ice wave formation could not stop it at all. What kind of sword formation is this? Master Xueyu panicked and no longer dared to let his nascent soul go back into his body. The nascent soul formed a spell, and jumped out from the top of his body, and disappeared into the distance. The moment the nascent soul disappeared, Master Xueyu used a secret technique, and forced his body to escape toward the Sky Patrol City. He wanted to avoid the attack of the green light sword. Whoosh whoosh, there was no need to think. After the green light swept by, Master Xueyu's body had only moved a few feet before it was cut into pieces. In just a moment, Master Xueyu's nascent soul reappeared a few dozen feet below. The nascent soul's face was pale and he was panicking. Where do you think you're going? Unfortunately, Chong Taishu did not plan on letting him go. He roared and sneered. His right hand's index and middle finger were together as if he was forming a sword spell. Master Xueyu's nascent soul did not dare to hesitate. He immediately formed another spell and disappeared. Kill! Chong Taishu did not panic. As he formed another spell, A Taiwei azure light sword appeared from the green spider web and slashed toward where the nascent soul disappeared like lightning. Wung, with a sword hum, the Taiwei azure light sword slashed through where the nascent soul disappeared and disappeared as well. Next, a few 100 feet away, ice flowers that looked like colored glass appeared. The color of the ice flowers was purple and green, the same color as the armor on Master Shui Yu's nascent soul. As soon as the ice flowers appeared, they immediately absorbed a large amount of spiritual qi from the world. An extremely cold ice was formed from the ice flowers. It was extremely tough, and it was as if it was going to seal the entire space. However, as soon as these ice flowers and astral ice were formed, traces of green light were immediately produced from the space. In an instant, everything was split in half, and the seal immediately collapsed. Another miserable scream came from 1,000 feet away. Sage Shui Yu's nascent soul had an expression of disbelief as he looked down at his own body. His nascent soul, which was wearing a suit of armor, had been cut in half. That seemingly sturdy armor hadn't been able to stop the supreme light sword. What was even more strange was that the two halves of Daoist Shui Yu's nascent soul became blurry and was absorbed by the supreme light sword. This Shui Yu enlightened master never thought that he would die here. He knew very well that he still had a way to escape in the Sky Patrol City. As long as he entered the Sky Patrol City, unfortunately, it was too late for him to think about anything else now. He really couldn't understand how this so-called Heaven's single azure light sword formation could be so fast. Why were the 5 azure light swords so sharp? At this moment, Sage Shui Yu regretted it. He blamed himself. Why didn't he escape earlier? Why did he escape before he sensed danger? At that time, the sword cultivators hadn't surrounded the Sky Patrol City, and the single azure light sword formation hadn't been completely set up yet, so he had enough time to escape. My life Shui Yu Jinren still wanted to remember something, but his consciousness was already blurred. His entire nascent soul gradually disappeared into the supreme light sword, leaving behind only a gaze filled with hatred as he looked into the distance. That was where Sage Miyu and the others were fighting. Now that Sage Shui Yu had died, Sage Quangtian and the others were naturally in danger. After all, Sage Shui Yu was the one in charge of the formation. Without Sage Shui Yu, the ice wave formation was just an empty shell. At this moment, Daoist Crazed Heaven and Daoist Miyu both had serious expressions, and even their eyes were filled with panic. Although they were far away from Daoist Shui Yu's nascent soul being destroyed, they could still feel it. They felt a sense of sadness and uneasiness. After all, which cultivator who could reach nascent soul wasn't a genius? Which one of them didn't suffer a lot? Which one of them didn't experience a lot of hardships? However, it was also in an instant that all of this turned into bubbles. Although some words and stories would be left behind, who could really remember him in their hearts after being passed down for so many years? In particular, if he couldn't escape this calamity, he would most likely end up like Sage Shui Yu and die. As a result, not to mention the usually arrogant Daoist Wild Heaven, even the calm Daoist Miyu had a trace of panic in her eyes. Daoist Wild Heaven patted his forehead, and a purple-golden light rushed out. A 1-foot-long rhombus-shaped magic treasure flickered with dazzling lightning as it appeared in the air. This lightning was different from the lightning that Daoist Miyu had used before. This lightning was purple and gold, and every time it flashed, it would create a lightning flower in the air. All of the lightning flowers extended in the air, and at the end of each lightning flower, there were specks of black as if they were hiding in the void. This magic treasure was Daoist Master Miyu's final life-saving measure. Following the birth of this lightning flower, the green spiderweb that had just broken the great ice wave formation began to flicker, and the green light around Daoist Master Miyu actually showed signs of collapsing. Sage Miyu was overjoyed when he saw this. He formed a seal, and was about to activate his nascent soul. Just as he was about to charge out of the sword formation, he heard a loud voice above his head. "Miyu, you should obediently stay here." Following this voice, skyscraper sword sex Ruatian appeared not far from Sage Miyu. Ruatian also had a green light sword in his hand. The green light also flashed and slashed at Sage Miyu's magic treasure. Wherever the azure light went, the outer layer of the lightning flower on the magic treasure was annihilated. It was as if all the lightning threads were cut off by the azure light. Crack crack, a series of crisp sounds rang out, and azure cracks appeared on the purple gold magic treasure. Sage Miyu's eyes were about to split open and blood came out from the corner of his mouth. Just like Sage Xueyu, he couldn't imagine how the green light sword could be so sharp. I'll risk it. Sage Miyu knew that this was a moment of life and death. If he didn't fight to the death with the sword cultivator, he would have no chance of survival. However, before he could put his hand on his forehead and release his nascent soul to control the magic treasure, the green spiderweb that had collapsed suddenly shrank and completely wrapped around Daoist Miyu. The moment the green light gathered, all of the world's spiritual energy was completely cut off. Not only was the lightning around Sage Miyu extinguished, even the lightning flower magic treasure lost its brilliance and fell on top of her head. With Sage Miyu trapped, how could Kuang Tian escape? He was in the same situation as Kuang Tian. Looking at the green space, Kuang Tian smiled bitterly. He already understood that Chong Tai-su and the others didn't plan to kill him. All they wanted was the Sky Patrol City. Of course, his value alive was much higher than his value dead. The sword cultivator had 4 nascent soul cultivators and hundreds of thousands of disciples from the 2 sects and Sky Patrol City. How could he be afraid of other Taoist cultivators attacking the city? Forget it, Kuang Tian smiled faintly. I've only just reached nascent soul. Which one of these swords isn't stronger than me? Falling into their hands isn't a coward. Damn it. Thinking of this, Kuang Tian couldn't help but curse. Xiaohua, you little bastard, if it weren't for you, would I be able to guard Sky Patrol City? This person had always been like this. Not to mention the secular world or cultivators, Kuang Tian and Sage Miyu led the disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect to guard Sky Patrol City, because of Xiaohua's message. But in the end, if Kuang Tian and the others weren't greedy for military merits, why would they come? If Daoist Crazed Heaven and the others had blocked the sword cultivators, Sky 1 Azure Light Sword formation, and obtained the battle merit, Daoist Crazed Heaven would have taken most of the credit for himself, and definitely wouldn't have pushed the blame onto Xiaohua like now. Unfortunately, no matter how much Kuang Tian cursed Xiaohua, he couldn't escape the fate of being captured by the sword cultivator. Xiaohua, who was far away in the country of Xi, definitely didn't know the cause and effect of this. To the northwest of the country of Xi, there wasn't the bitter cold of the Huan country. Most of the land was green grassland. Most of the time, it was blue like waves. Although it didn't have the monstrous momentum of the Kuai-he Sea, a ripple of wind and grass could be transmitted thousands of miles away. It was a kind of boundlessness. Occasionally, there were some herds of cattle and sheep, embellishing the blue sky like white clouds. One in the sky and one on the ground, it was even more beautiful. However, the grassland wasn't the Kuai-he Sea after all. Slightly to the west, there was an endless mountain range. These mountain ranges were also different from the other places in the country of Xi. There were more low mountain ridges and fewer steep peaks. Moreover, the trees on these mountain ridges were lush, covering the entire mountain range. From time to time, there were sounds of tigers roaring and wolves howling. Occasionally, birds would soar into the sky from the mountain ridges, flying to different places with different feathers. The mountain wind was also somewhat long, lacking the biting cold of the Huan country. From time to time, it would blow on the face, like the hand of a seductive lover. The murmuring of the stream was almost endless. Although it was in the mountain ridges, under the green shadows, and between the streams, it was impossible to see a trace. But if you only heard the murmuring of the stream a few times, you wouldn't be able to forget it. Further into the depths of the mountain ridges seemed to be as boundless as the grassland. The undulating greenery was like the solidified waves of the sea. The stagnant notes, no matter how you looked at it, were comfortable. This place with beautiful mountains and limpid waters was really different from the ice and snow of the Huan country. It was no wonder that the swordsmen of the Huan country were always thinking about the territory of the 3 countries. Chapter 2962. In the midst of this boundless greenery, a myriad of colors suddenly appeared. There were red, white, yellow, and purple. There were actually spring flowers of various colors in the midst of the green leaves. The sudden appearance of these gorgeous colors was like a calm sea with sky-high waves. In an instant, one's tranquil heart was stirred. Or perhaps it was like a simple spring day rushing into a hot summer day. One's entire mood was joyful and excited. As they went deeper into the mountains, the number of spring flowers increased, and their colors became even more colorful. Colorful could no longer describe the exuberance of the spring flowers in the depths of the mountains. And at the source of this myriad of colors, another huge city appeared in the mountains, floating in the sea of flowers. This was one of the 7 major cities in the country of Xi, Tongmu City. Beyond Tongmu City, in the northwest, above the sea of flowers, a flying boat was quietly parked. On the flying boat were Xiaohua and the other 3 who had just returned to the country of Xi from the millions of Meng Mountains. The 4 of them were granted a shortcut to cross the country of Huan by Elder Wu of Hu's stronghold. But this shortcut was not a safe one. There were countless dangers on the way. Not to mention the natural moats, strange birds and monsters. Even the sword cultivators they encountered from time to time put Xiaohua and the others in danger. However, this path was chosen by Elder Wu and used by soul scholars. Elder Wu already had an estimate of Xiaohua's strength, but he still underestimated Xiaohua. Admittedly, this path had a 3rd-grade illusory swordsman laying down a sword array. Admittedly, it was extremely difficult, but under Xiaohua's divine ability, they were all turned into smoke. Finally, after half a year of hard work, the 4 of them finally stepped into the territory of the country of Xi. And this half a year of hard work was a great harvest for Xiaohua and the others. Xiaohua's soul cultivation technique had now entered Ming Ruotian. The 50 green seal characters that belonged to Ming Ruotian were revealed one by one, each of them releasing a roar like a stormy sea. The entire mysterious dark cloud was stirred up. Ever since Xiaohua learned from Elder Wu of Huta village that the green seal text was the most basic and authentic cultivation method of soul cultivation, he didn't plan to look at other cultivation methods. He didn't even look at Master Qin Qin's inheritance. Of course, Xiaohua still started from the most basic of soul cultivation methods. After all, Li Zongbao and the immortal slaughtering whip still needed him to repair them. After witnessing the power of the sun-shrouding art, Xiaohua did not give up on this aspect of cultivation. Spiritual sense was indeed too important to Dao sect cultivators. It was simply the foundation of all spells. With a powerful spiritual sense, the power of spells would increase tremendously. There were even many spells that could not be used by low-level cultivators, but with a powerful spiritual sense that surpassed those of the same level, one could see through their core. In addition, the primordial spirit that was formed after comprehending the initial green seal text in Ming Ruotian, after the 50th green seal text was born, the primordial spirit underwent some changes that even Xiaohua didn't understand. This change seemed to be complete, but it also seemed to be indiscernible. Xiaohua clearly felt it, but when he really examined it, other than some green lines on the primordial spirit, he couldn't see any other differences. Xiaohua was helpless. He sent the primordial spirit back to the space and had it continue to refine fire talismans, warm up the pill furnace, and refine simple pills. Xiaohua himself didn't have any free time. These primordial spirits didn't have anything to do, so he just let them move. What made Xiaohua the most depressed was the heavenly laws embodiment technique. He originally had high expectations for this technique. He wanted to condense a Dharma body outside of his physical body. However, the Phoenix primordial spirit comprehended this technique for a long time. It could clearly use it, and it also used the technique on its physical body. However, the technique's effects didn't appear at all. On one hand, Xiaohua suspected that he had comprehended wrongly. On the other hand, he muttered to himself, wondering if it was because his physical body had already condensed the Phoenix Dharma body, and could no longer condense a second Dharma body. However, since the time he spent comprehending the cosmic form technique was still short, he decided to put this matter aside, and let the Phoenix primordial spirit continue to comprehend it. After all, if one primordial spirit comprehended something, the other primordial spirits would also benefit, so it was not a waste of effort. As for Fairy Hongxia, a faint 5-colored brilliance would appear every day. She was constantly receiving the Phoenix's legacy. It seemed that she was improving every day. As for how much she had improved, Xiaohua did not ask. Li Zongbao continued to nurture the immortal slaughtering whip. This was also Xiaohua's suggestion. Li Zongbao was a famous disciple of the Utopia faction, so he had all kinds of cultivation arts and secret arts. This immortal slaughtering whip was exactly what he needed. As a spiritual weapon, Li Zongbao had nurtured the immortal slaughtering whip when it was first refined. When the spiritual weapon was completed, its power could be imagined. This was also the reason why Li Zongbao never asked Xiaohua for a cultivation technique. Specialization leads to permanence, permanence leads to permanence, and permanence leads to strength. This was nothing more than dripping water penetrating a stone. Poor Xiao Mao, who had worked hard for more than half a year, could only drive the flowing cloud flying ship to fly everyone to the country of Xi. Moreover, he was sowing seeds while flying, so he was very busy. Li Zongbao nurtured the spiritual weapon, and Fairy Hongxia comprehended the legacy. He could not possibly let Xiaohua drive the flying ship, could he? Well, even if Xiaohua took the initiative to come, Xiao Mao would not dare to leave it to Xiaohua. He now knew Xiaohua's poor sense of direction very well. That was really a great weapon. Rather than having him worry at the side, it was better to drive the ship himself. However, it would be a mistake to think that Xiao Mao had not made any progress. Because driving the flowing cloud flying boat required transcendence energy, Xiao Mao was constantly using the dragonization incantation. The more he used the dragonization incantation, the more he felt the vastness of this technique. His meridians were constantly and imperceptibly strengthening, and his vital energy were constantly increasing. Xiao Mao felt that he would be able to break through to the late stage of foundation establishment very soon, and the Aurus core stage was definitely within his reach. Everyone had made progress, and the road back home had also come to an end. At this time, Xiaohua was riding the flying ship, passing through the thousands of flowers. His eyes looked at the flower-like city in disbelief, and his young face could not help but reveal a helpless expression. "Sigh, this world is really wonderful." The 7 major cities of the country of Xi each have their own unique characteristics, and each have their own beauty. This Xiao really did not expect that in the depths of the foothills, there would be such a splendid and colorful city hidden outside the world. Only by looking at such colors with the naked eye can one perceive the prosperity of this world. How can one experience the mortal world through their spiritual sense? That's right. Fairy Hongxia's colorful brilliance was also retracted. The skin on her face was refined, and looked incomparably holy. Her beautiful face was like a fairy's, even more beautiful than the thousands of flowers. This concubine has long heard of the great name of Twilight Tong City, but it is deep in the northwest border. If there is no urgent matter, just the transportation of spirit stones is enough for this concubine to consider. So I have never had the chance to come here. Hee. Who would have thought that today I would be able to see the legendary Twilight Tong Spring? Fairy Hongxia's eyes reflected the thousands of colors in the distance. Coupled with the brilliance of her own body, an indescribable magnificence was faintly emitted. Unexpectedly, Xiao Mao and the rest had a feeling that they could not bear to look at her. Twilight Tong Spring is indeed famous. Li Zongbao also stood up, and his face was slightly flushed. He laughed coldly. But the most famous? I'm afraid it is the face-retaining pill? Face-retaining pill? That's right. Xiaohua suddenly realized. As early as during the auction in Sky Patrol City, the auctioneer had mentioned the Twilight Tong City's face-retaining pill. Xiaohua was already on guard that day. After all, the face-retaining pill was extremely rare in the Donrain mainland. Xiaohua had only seen it in Chen Yi's burial flower manor. Therefore, a thought flashed through his mind. He did not know if the scheming Chen Yi was related to Twilight Tong City. Of course, there were countless rare herbs in the Donrain mainland. Who could say that a flourishing place like Twilight Tong City would not have the face-retaining pill? Even though the face-retaining pill is famous, but compared to the rejuvenation pill, the difference is like heaven and earth. Fairy Hongxia smiled and looked at Xiaohua thoughtfully. Xiaohua glanced at Fairy Hongxia, as if he did not see her smile. He waved his hand and said, "Let's go. We can go to Luyang through the transportation array in Twilight Tong City. Now that this Zhao's storage bag is full, those spirit stones are nothing in my eyes. Anyway, let's hurry back to Luyang. This Zhao is really curious. Wuxia, is she really still alive in this world? Hearing Xiaohua mention her sister, Fairy Hongxia's face changed. She did not say anything else and let Xiao Mao keep the flowing cloud-flying boat. The four of them flew towards Twilight Tong City in the distance. It didn't take long for Tongmu City to appear in their sights. This Twilight Tong City was very strange. There was no obvious tall city wall. Instead, there was something like a wall of vines that surrounded the entire Twilight Tong City. Twilight Tong City was within the wall of vines. The wall of vines that was not very tall surrounded the periphery of Twilight Tong City. Rather than saying that these vines were city walls, they were more like decorations. However, the thick vines were like the arms of an adult. They were entangled together and extended over the mountain ridge. They were so long that one could not see the end of them. Moreover, the wall of vines was extremely wide and thick. It was at least a few miles wide. It looked like a huge green python that was coiled in a cluster of flowers. At first glance, the undulating mountain ridge within the wall of vines was still covered with flowers and plants. Countless celestial birds flew up from time to time. It was no different from the surroundings. However, Xiaohua's Buddhist consciousness had already discovered the strangeness of the wall of vines. An extremely thick wood-based spiritual energy of heaven and earth condensed around the wall of vines, forming a huge enchantment. The so-called blooming flowers and chirping orioles were probably the illusion of the Twilight Tong City's array, right? This Twilight Tong City's array can actually create such a huge illusion. Its power should not be underestimated, Xiaohua thought to himself. However, the distance between Twilight Tong City and Hung Country is not much different from Xintian City. Although there are many dangers along the way from Hung Country, and most of the bright sword swordsmen would not be able to pass through, but, compared to the Sword Tomb, it is much better. Why didn't the Hung Country's swordsmen kill their way into Shi Country from here? Chapter 2963. Thinking of this, Xiaohua could not help but laugh. Damn it, what am I thinking? Do you want to see the world in chaos? Facing sword cultivators in Sky Patrol City has already caused a lot of casualties to Dao Sect. If Tongmu City comes, won't more Dao Sect disciples die? Besides, the real reason why the sword cultivators attacked Sky Patrol City was because the soul cultivators were fighting behind Huan Kingdom. Tongmu City was not too far away from Mount Meng. If the sword cultivators were to fight here, wouldn't that expose the fact that they were being attacked from behind? No matter how stupid sword cultivators are, they won't do this, right? Not to mention that they have Jiuxia behind them who knows everything. Thinking of Jiuxia, Xiaohua could not help but think of the beauty that could bewitch all living things. It was as if this beauty had been deeply engraved in his mind, and it was impossible to get rid of it without some special magic power. Someone is coming. Xiao Mao's divine sense was very strong now. While Xiaohua and the others were looking at Tongmu City, he was looking in other directions. Oh, Xiaohua's Buddhist sense swept toward the direction where Xiao Mao was looking. He already knew that this place was not far away from Tongmu City. If he was not mistaken, these people should be the city guards of Tongmu City. Sure enough, after the four of them slowed down and flew for a while, a dozen cultivators of about the 11th level of Qi refining appeared in the distance. These cultivators were dressed in green military uniforms with a thin layer of armor. The style of the armor was very strange. It seemed to be made of rattan, and the rattan flickered with a faint green light. Runes could be vaguely seen in the green light. The dozen or so cultivators had already sensed the presence of Xiao Mao and the others. Their faces were filled with respect as they silently hovered in mid-air. When the four of them approached, the leading 12th layer Qi refining guard respectfully said, Junior Wang Cheng greets the four seniors. May I know if the four seniors are passing by? Are you passing by or entering my Tongmu City? In such a situation, Xiaohua usually did not step forward. Xiao Mao looked at Li Zongbao, who was also silent. He flew half a foot forward and waved his hand. Get up. We are passing by Tongmu City and want to use its teleportation formation. Yes, I understand. After Wang Qing answered, he said carefully, however, it is currently wartime. Although sword cultivators rarely come to my Tongmu City, this place is not too far from the Huan state. My city lord has ordered that any cultivator our Tongmu City's patrol team encounters, regardless of whether they have entered Tongmu City or not, must show their identity token. If Senior wants to enter Twilight Tong City, please allow this Junior to verify your identity. Tisk, Xiao Mao laughed. This place is miles away from Sky Patrol City. Why would a sword cultivator come here? Besides, even if a sword cultivator were to come, would you be able to detect the identity token of a Dao sect cultivator? Wang Qing seemed to be a little shy, his face slightly red as he said in a low voice, Junior and the others know that our cultivation is shallow, so this kind of examination cannot be taken seriously. However, this is better than nothing. Of course, if Senior doesn't want me to examine it, then I'll ask the captain of the city guards of Dantone City to come over. Xiao Mao laughed. He was just casually pointing out that Dantone City's methods were more formal than effective. How could he really make things difficult for the city guards of Qi Refinement Realm? He hurriedly clapped his hands and took out his token. He handed it to Wang Qing and said gently, "There's no need for that. This is your duty. Since we want to enter Tongmu City, we naturally have to act according to the orders of the city lord." "Thank you, Senior." Wang Qing breathed a sigh of relief. He could roughly sense that these Foundation Establishment cultivators were in the middle and late stages of the Foundation Establishment realm through magic. Most of these Foundation Establishment cultivators were disdainful of Qi Refinement disciples. They had also encountered some of these Foundation Establishment cultivators during today's routine inspection. Many of these Foundation Establishment cultivators left in a huff and did not pay attention to them at all. Most of them would only be willing to take out their identity tokens when a captain of the same Foundation Establishment realm came out. It was rare to see someone like Xiao Mao, who spoke gently and took out his token without hesitation. Xiao Mao of the Xuanyan School. Xiao Mao's identity token was written very clearly. Moreover, the image was exactly the same as the cultivator in front of them. Wang Qing used his divine sense, which had only been cultivated for a few years, to check it out. He then looked at Xiao Mao and was about to withdraw his divine sense. However, at this moment, a few other shining words in the token caught his attention. Ha! When Wang Qing saw it clearly, he couldn't help but cry out in surprise. He then looked behind Xiao Mao in disbelief. Wang Qing's cry of surprise was not a big deal. The dozen or so Qi Refinement disciples behind him who had been preparing for a long time immediately scattered. At the same time, a few communication talismans were sent out from the hands of the disciples who were on guard furthest away. Looking at their tacit cooperation, it was obvious that they had been training for a long time. Damn it, Xiao Mao was also stunned. He couldn't think of anything wrong with his token. Council Hall. First Squad. Wang Qing obviously didn't expect that his cry of surprise would cause such a big reaction. At this time, he didn't have time to explain anything. Instead, he shouted in an incredulous voice, "First Squad of the Council Hall?" Xiao Hua frowned slightly behind the three people. "Is it a special squad of the Council Hall?" But then, Xiao Hua suddenly understood. It seemed that after the Battle of the Sword Catacomb, the Council Hall named this special squad as the First Squad of the Council Hall, because of their outstanding achievements in battle. In the future, no other squad would be able to use this name. That day, Li Zongbao just casually mentioned it, and Xiaohua also casually listened. Unexpectedly, the name of the first squad of the council hall had spread to Tongmu City. This junior deserves to die. This junior deserves to die. Wang Cheng's ecstatic gaze swept across Xiao Mao, Li Zongbao, Fairy Hongxia and Xiaohua, and then fell on Fairy Hongxia's fairy-like beauty. He unconsciously slapped his forehead and said regretfully, "This junior should have thought of the four seniors when he saw them. I have seen the four seniors' appearances in the battle report. How could this junior be so blind?" What? This? The dozens of Qi Refinement disciples who were fleeing in all directions also came to a realization. They all stopped in midair and looked at the four of them. Naturally, most of their gazes were still fixed on Fairy Hongxia's face. Yes, this is the first squad of the council hall. This junior saw the battle report half a year ago. Yes, this is Fairy Hongxia from the Rinsing Flower sect, and this is Senior Li Zongbao from the Utopia faction. This is Senior Xiaohua from the Imperial Thunder sect. Heavens, I really saw the legendary hero of the Great Sword Catacomb. One of the disciples shouted. We are indeed the first squad of the council hall, Xiao Mao said with a smile. But now that the first stage of the Great Sword Catacomb has ended, we are here to gain experience. Yes, this junior knows, Wang Cheng said impatiently. The four seniors formed deep friendships during the Great Battle, and their cultivations also had great breakthroughs. Therefore, after the Great Battle, the four seniors went out to travel together. On one hand, they comprehended what they had gained during the Great Battle. On the other hand, they lived in the wilderness and avoided the harassment of the mortals. They did not bring the battle achievements of the Great Battle into their own cultivation. This kind of pure and untainted nobility really makes us admire you. Damn it, what the hell is this? In the end, Xiaohua could only shake his head. In this world, rumors are the most erroneous. What deep friendship? Where did these foundation establishment friends come from? Do they not have any respect for my Dantong city? Just as Xiaohua was laughing inwardly, several divine consciousnesses swept over from the direction of Dantong city. Once they discovered Xiaohua and the others, they immediately locked onto them. At the same time, a rough voice roared loudly. Captain Mu Wang Cheng naturally knew that it was the message talismans that had caused the trouble. He hurriedly shouted, Please don't misunderstand. This is the first squad of the council hall of the Dao sect. Ah, the first squad of the council hall? In the distance, several early-stage Foundation establishment city guards flew over with a murderous aura. They were flying over with hundreds of Qi refinement disciples. Upon hearing Wang Cheng's shout, the burly man in the lead was as valiant as his voice. His bulging eyes swept over Xiao Mao and the others in astonishment. He was stunned on the spot. Not only the early-stage Foundation establishment cultivator in the lead, but the other city guards and the hundreds of Qi refinement disciples were also stunned by the name of the first squad of the council hall of the council hall. That's right, since the beginning of the war, although Dantong City had not been involved in the war, as one of the 7 major cities of the Kingdom of Xi, how could Dantong City not pay attention to the situation of the war in Sky Patrol City? Almost every day, the situation of the war would be sent to Dantong City in the shortest time possible. Dantong City specially set up a so-called council hall. This council hall did nothing but announce the war report of Sky Patrol City. It was for all the cultivators to discuss. Among the cultivators, there were certainly some who were obsessed with cultivation, but there were also some who liked to be lively, especially when discussing the war. If there were some spirit stones and elixirs as wagers, it would be even more attractive. Therefore, since the Great War of Dao and Sword, a large number of cultivators would gather in Dantong City's council hall every day. There were even many cultivators gathered in the tea houses and wine shops near the council hall. Not only did they listen to the war report and analyze the situation, but they also gave pointers and predicted the outcome of the war. It had to be said that the city lord of Dantong City was farsighted. This council hall not only attracted a large number of cultivators to Dantong City, but there was also an endless stream of small and large merchants. Dantong City's reputation also soared in the war, bringing great prosperity to Dantong City. To a large extent, it made up for the loss caused by not being able to provide the face-retaining elixirs in a short period of time. It could be said that Dantong City's council hall had a better grasp of the news of the war than many of the cultivation sects in the 3 kingdoms of cultivation. And in the first stage of the Great War of Dao cultivators, the special task force of the council hall had not only risen gradually in Sky Patrol City, but also became a dazzling star in Dantong City. Chapter 2964. Speaking of Li Zongbao's special task force, there was an interesting story in Tongmu City. That year, When the Dao sect had issued the #1 bounty order, Twilight Tong City had also released the news in a timely manner. It was said that many cultivators had formed teams and headed to Sky Patrol City to kill Qin Jian that day. As for how many had gone and how many had returned, no one knew. What everyone knew was that Twilight Tong City had also set up bets based on the battle situation at that time. They had placed bets on which sect's disciple would be able to kill Qin Jian. Of course, most of the bets were on Golden Core stage cultivators, and there was no sign of Foundation Establishment stage cultivators. After Li Zongbao and the others became famous, no one knew what the Dantong City was thinking. Perhaps it was to play to the gallery, but they actually allowed the special task force from the assembly hall to participate in the competition. Moreover, they even invested a considerable amount of spirit stones. When the other cultivators saw this, they were almost overjoyed. This was because although Li Zongbao and the others had military exploits and could even be said to be very outstanding, the three of them were Foundation Establishment cultivators after all. Not to mention the three of them, even if there were 30 of them, they could not be compared to Qin Jian, who was a third-grade illusory sword. Therefore everyone bet with Tongmu City. For some reason, the people of Dantong City seemed to believe that this special task force would definitely be able to obtain Qin Jian's head. Whenever someone placed a bet, they would answer it without any hesitation. As a result, in the past few years, this place had actually accumulated an enormous amount of spirit stones. Just hearing the number of spirit stones was enough to shock anyone. This number not only exceeded the total number of spirit stones that all the Golden Core cultivators in the conference hall had killed Qin Jian, but it also exceeded the total number of other bets. All the cultivators were looking at Tongmu City as a joke. They were waiting for Qin Jian to be killed by the Golden Core cultivators, or for Qin Jian to not be killed by Li Zongbao and the others and get the spirit stones that they won after the battle. However, the news of Qin Jian being killed by Li Zongbao and the others came from Sky Patrol City. This was almost impossible news, but it caused a huge uproar in Tongmu City. The entire conference hall and the entire Tongmu City were in an uproar. Even the cultivators who did not care about the special task force from the conference hall paid attention to Li Zongbao, Xiao Mao, and Xiao Hua. Not only did Twilight Tong City win a lot of spirit stones, they also obtained a commendation order from Sky Patrol City. The images of Li Zongbao, Xiao Mao, and Xiao Hua were displayed in the meeting hall for all cultivators to see. They even listed the sect information of Li Zongbao, Xiao Mao, and Xiao Hua, as well as the glory of their participation in the battle. Especially before the Great Battle of the Sword Tomb, when Xiao Hua withdrew from the Special Task Force and Fairy Hongxia participated in it. It attracted the attention of many male cultivators. The story of Fairy Hongxia breaking the 4 cardinal sword array, and her Xiantian primordial water, saving her Golden Core stage master, was spread by word of mouth in Tongmu City. Was leader, who was Foundation Establishment cultivator was stunned, was leader, leaders, how leader was in midair. It's really the first team from the conference hall. Leader Mu came to his senses, and immediately put on a smile. He adjusted his armor and bowed. I'm Mu Ziming. Greetings to senior brother Li, Fairy Hongxia, and the 2 senior brothers Xiao. I'll lead the hundreds of thousands of disciples in Tongmu City to thank the 4 senior brothers for killing the enemy in the Battle of Sky Patrol City. Following Captain Mu's salute, all the other Tongmu City's disciples followed suit. Their attitudes were extremely respectful. Xiao Mao obviously did not expect his name to be so famous in Sky Patrol City, nor did he expect that he would win so much praise from the battle. He hurriedly returned the bow and said, Junior brother Mu, please rise. Junior brothers and nephews, please rise. Xiao Mao and the others are disciples of the Dao sect. When the sword cultivators attacked with their swords, we naturally had to fight them head-on without hesitation. We did so, and so did you. Although you were guarding Tongmu City, you were also on the side of the battle. You have the responsibility to defend against the enemy. You were able to stop the sword cultivators from sneaking in, which is also a merit. It's just that everyone can see the merit of Xiao Mao and the others, but your merit is easy to be overlooked by everyone. Xiao Mao's words made Mu Ziming's face flush. He straightened his body and rubbed his hands. He said, "Senior brother Xiao is indeed as broad-minded and humble as the legends say. Your words made my blood boil, and I almost wanted to fly to Sky Patrol City to kill the sword cultivators." Hearing this, Xiao Hua suddenly thought of the battle situation that LV Ruochang had mentioned when he stopped them. He could not help but ask, "Leader Mu, how's the battle situation in Sky Patrol City now?" Mu Ziming was obviously familiar with Xiao Hua's face. He hurriedly replied, "Senior brother Xiao Hua, now Sky Patrol City is not within the attack range of the sword cultivators. Most of the sword cultivators." Then Mu Ziming roughly recounted the battle report obtained from Tongmu City. Xiao Hua's expression changed drastically. Seeing Xiao Hua's expression change, Mu Ziming was also shocked. He hurriedly smiled apologetically and said, "Senior brother Xiao, may I know what I said wrong?" "Nothing." Xiao Hua waved his hand, lowered his head, and did not speak. However, after a moment, Li Zongbao, who was standing behind Xiao Mao, received Xiao Hua's voice transmission and said, "Junior brother Mu." "Yes, senior brother Li, what can I do for you?" Mu Ziming was more respectful to Li Zongbao, the leader of a team, and hurriedly replied, "How long does it take for the battle report to be sent from Sky Patrol City to Tongmu City?" Li Zongbao asked faintly. This Mu Ziming hesitated slightly, thought for a moment, and said with a wry smile, "I really don't know the exact time. This is my Tongmu City's secret." Approximate time. Li Zongbao was a little impatient. Mu Ziming did not dare to neglect and whispered, "Sometimes it's a month, sometimes it's more than 10 days. So long?" Li Zongbao frowned. "Let me tell you, senior brother Li, because there is no direct teleportation formation from Sky Patrol City to other big cities, it takes a lot of effort for Tongmu City to get news from Sky Patrol City. It takes a lot of effort. Many times, the message charm is lost. It's already good that Tongmu City can get news from Sky Patrol City in such a short time. Furthermore, this humble one dares to boast that any news that can be obtained in the Three Kingdoms can be obtained in Tongmu City. Then, how long has it been since you last got information from Sky Patrol City?" Li Zongbao did not wait for Mu Ziming to finish, and interrupted him and asked. It seems like Mu Ziming was a little hesitant. Reporting to Captain Mu, "I just came from the conference hall yesterday. It seems that there has been no new battle report for more than 1.5 months. A Foundation establishment city guard beside him hurriedly whispered in his ear, "Conference hall?" Li Zongbao rolled his eyes and asked curiously, "Why does Tongmu City have a conference hall?" However, just as he finished speaking, Fairy Hongxia, who was beside him, sighed and said, "Senior brother Li, why are you still asking such a boring question? Sky Patrol City, I'm afraid it has fallen into the hands of the sword cultivators. We'd better hurry into the city and use the teleportation formation." "What? Sky Patrol City? Sky Patrol City has fallen into the hands of the sword cultivators? Is this true?" Mu Ziming turned pale with fright. Fairy Hongxia's heart was also filled with mixed feelings. She had heard from Xiao Hua that this news had been passed to the Imperial Thunder Sect 2 years ago. She felt that there would be no more problems, and that the tragedy of the sword catacomb would not happen again. However, LV Ruochang brought them another piece of bad news. Xiao Hua's message did not seem to be taken seriously by the Taoist sect cultivators. Of course, Fairy Hongxia and Xiao Hua did not think that Jiuxia would not send this news to Qiandiheng. Since Jiuxia could say it out loud, he was naturally not afraid of being found out by the Taoist sect cultivators. At this time, the few questions that Li Zongbao asked were obviously from Xiao Hua. However, from Mu Ziming's answers, Fairy Hongxia already understood that when the four of them passed through the territory of the Huan Kingdom and returned to the Kingdom of Xi, the sword cultivators had already launched their final attack on Sky Patrol City. Since it was another unintentional attack, and under the planning of Jiuxia, even if the Taoist sect had a nascent soul stage cultivator, how could they be a match for the sword cultivators? The outcome of this great battle of Dao cultivators had undergone an earth-shattering change. Didn't you say just now? Generally speaking, the battle situation from Sky Patrol City to Tongmu City would take at most a month's time. Now, it has been less than a month and a half. If Sky Patrol City had not fallen, what other accidents could there be? Li Zongbao said lightly. Well, since our identities have been confirmed, can we enter Tongmu City? Yes. Yes, of course. Mu Ziming stammered. Obviously, he was particularly surprised by the news that Sky Patrol City had fallen. If it's possible, I'll have to trouble Captain Mu to send someone to take us to the teleportation formation, Fairy Hongxia said, eager to return home. Yes, yes. Mu Ziming nodded hurriedly. Before he could say anything, Wang Qing stepped forward and said, Captain Mu, shall I lead the way? All right, go ahead. Seeing this, Mu Ziming nodded. Yes. Wang Qing was very happy. He bowed and said, For seniors, please follow me. Xiao Mao nodded and looked at Li Zongbao. The two of them followed Wang Qing, while Fairy Hongxia and Xiao Hua prepared to follow behind. Senior brother Li at this time, Mu Ziming came to his senses and hurriedly called out. Senior brother, can you wait for a moment? I still have to report the news of the 4 senior brothers' arrival in Tongmu City to the city governor. Moreover, senior brother Li's words just now were really shocking. I have to report it immediately. If the city governor asks, Captain Mu, we have urgent matters to attend to back to the sect. I hope that you can pass on our apologies to the governor of the city. Li Zongbao was even more anxious than Fairy Hongxia. He rejected the request without hesitation. All right. Okay. Mu Ziming nodded and at the same time, he hurriedly gave a look to the other disciples. There were already disciples in the distance who turned and flew away. Seeing that the disciples had left, Mu Ziming bowed again and said, Senior brother Li, the news just now is really important. I have to report it to the city governor as soon as possible. I'll leave first. Please forgive me, senior brother Li. Li Zongbao was a little unhappy, but he could not say anything. After all, this was Tongmu City, not the Utopia faction. He could only follow the thoughtful arrangements of Tongmu City. Chapter 2965. When Xiaohua saw Mu Ziming flying away hastily, while Wang Cheng brought the 4 of them and slowly flew towards the vine wall of Tongmu City, he sighed and asked, Marshal Nephew Wang, what's the matter with the Tongmu City's discussion hall you mentioned earlier? Oh, it's like this. I'll let Marshal Uncle Xiaohua know. Wang Cheng continued to talk about the origin of the discussion hall, and even talked about the special task force of the discussion hall in detail. Only then did he say with a smile, The 4 martial uncles have brought a considerable amount of spirit stones to my Tongmu City. Therefore, the disciples of my Tongmu City are extremely grateful to the 4 martial uncles in their hearts. Otherwise, this junior would not have been so ecstatic just now. AI Tongmu City Lord is really calculative. Xiaohua couldn't help but sigh in admiration. Putting the special task force team together with Qin Jian seemed extremely unreliable at first glance, but after thinking about it, this kind of thing was really unreliable. Therefore, the possibility of Twilight Tong City and the cultivators betting on a tie was the highest. Relying on this bet, everyone's attention was drawn to the other bets. These cultivators bet on Qin Jian, and at the same time, they couldn't help but place their bets on other bets. The popularity of this discussion hall bet immediately soared. Even if Twilight Tong City lost in this aspect, they could earn it back in other places. Not to mention, Tongmu City was purely a blind cat that met a dead mouse. They were extremely lucky to bet on Xiaohua, who was behind Li Zongbao. All of a sudden, Tongmu City had earned a lot of money. Wasn't that obvious? Of course, this one was purely out of Tongmu City Lord's expectations. However, this calculation also showed how shrewd Tongmu City Lord was. He had a premonition that surpassed ordinary people. Damn it, why does this Tongmu City Lord's shrewdness sound so similar to that sinister Chen Yi? Could the two of them have some kind of relationship? Xiaohua immediately thought of Chen Yi. However, before he could think further, Xiaohua's face suddenly changed as he looked at the city gate not far away. Xiaohua Fairy Hongxia was very sensitive to Xiaohua's change. She hurriedly raised her head and looked at the city gate not far away. She asked curiously, Is there anything strange? Rather than calling the city gate a door, it was more like a huge gap. The gap was right in the middle of the wide wall of vines. Hundreds or even thousands of vines weaved together to form an arched door. The top of the door was empty, and the vines dragged on the ground. Countless tiny runes flickered between the vines and on the ground. At this moment, many cultivators were entering and exiting from the two sides of the vine gate. On both sides of the vine gate, there were also city guards of Tongmu City standing guard in the air. It didn't look like there was anything wrong with it. However, in Xiaohua's eyes, this vine gate was extremely similar to Chun Yi's burial flower manor. Wangqing Xiaohua did not answer Fairy Hongxia's question. Instead, he said, "You said that the meeting hall contains the life stories of the four of us. Tell me, what are the stories that involve me?" When Fairy Hongxia heard this, she was equally shocked. Xiaohua had always been concealing his cultivation level, trying his best to be the shadow behind Li Zongbao. Wasn't Tongmu City's actions just to expose Xiaohua to the light? Junior has long memorized Martial Uncle Zhao's deeds. Every one of them is like a thunderclap reverberating in the ears. How could Wangqing know what Xiaohua was thinking? His words frightened Xiaohua even more. Damn it, I really didn't expect this. This young master actually became famous in Tongmu City, one of the 7 major cities. Man proposes, God disposes. I'm afraid it will fall into the ears of the person who schemed against this young master. Xiaohua was extremely regretful. However, after thinking about it for a while, he smiled even more bitterly. Nonsense, since he entered the sword catacomb, everything he did was shocking. Didn't he reveal his nascent soul cultivation level and sword transformation cultivation level? Even Lu Ruochang, a sword cultivator, called him Senior Nameless. The cultivators of the Dao sect would know about it sooner or later. Seeing that Xiaohua had stopped asking, Fairy Hongxia began to worry for him. She hurriedly asked Wangqing, "Tell me, what kind of heroic deeds did junior brother Xiao have recorded in the meeting hall of your Tongmu City?" Yes. Wangqing had long been observant and knew that Mu Ziming wanted to delay Xiaohua and the others. He wanted to take advantage of this period of time to report to the city lord. When he heard this, he smiled and took the opportunity to say, "Actually, regarding Martial Uncle Zhao's deeds, other than being influenced by the Great Battle, there are very few records of his deeds in the Imperial Thunder sect. This junior only knows that Martial Uncle failed to establish his foundation the first time, and only later did he attempt to establish his foundation the second time. Even before Martial Uncle entered the Imperial Thunder sect, there are very few records of his deeds as a rogue cultivator." Oh. When Xiaohua heard this, he almost reached out to pat his little heart. He heaved a sigh of relief and said with a smile, "Could it be that martial nephew Wang only remembers the deeds of senior brother Li Zongbao, and does not remember the records of this Xiao?" Of course not, Wangqing was very anxious. The deeds of Martial Uncle Li, Martial Uncle Xiao Mao, and Fairy Hongxia are indeed many and very detailed. However, this junior greatly admires Martial Uncle Xiao when he entered the Imperial Thunder sect as a rogue cultivator, rose to prominence in the Imperial Thunder sect with great difficulty, displayed his ferocity at the Feather Immortal Gathering, and now even stood out in the great battle of Dao and Sword. This junior has seen the records of Martial Uncle on the wall of heroes of the meeting hall at least 8 times, if not 10 times. How could this junior forget them? Damn it, there are even records of the Feather Immortal Gathering. This Tongmu City has really put in a lot of effort. Xiaohua was shocked in his heart. As they spoke, they had already arrived at the gates of Tongmu City. Seeing the 4 of them flying over, all the guards of Tongmu City stood respectfully and looked at them from afar. This caused the cultivators entering and leaving the city to feel that something was amiss. "Let's put on the camouflage cloak." Xiaohua knew that once they entered Tongmu City, they would definitely cause a commotion, so he hurriedly said, Li Zongbao did not think much of it, but he still nodded in agreement. The 4 of them put on the camouflage cloak and hid their figures, so that they could avoid being surrounded by a group of cultivators. Naturally, the 4 of them followed Wangqing into the city gate, and no guard stopped them. Obviously, they had already received Mu Ziming's orders. After passing through the city gate, Xiao Hua's eyes flashed, and a completely different scene appeared in between the light and shadow. He saw that Tongmu City was still a continuous mountain range, and there were no changes. However, among the brocade-like flowers and plants, there were many buildings that seemed to have been created by the gods. These buildings were either made of rattan, green wood, or bamboo, and their styles were all different. Some were like flower buds, some were like pine cones, and some were like thick wood. Although there were so many buildings of different sizes, and they almost covered the entire mountain range, at a glance, these buildings seemed to have grown naturally on the mountain range. There was no trace of magic power or man-made at all. This is really a place out of this world. Fairy Hongxia could not help but exclaim in admiration. Female cultivators had a much higher pursuit of beauty than male cultivators, and they had an innate love for such natural beauty. Fairy Hongxia. Wang Cheng, who was beside her, could not help but look at the sky and said proudly, "Senior, what you see is just the ordinary side of Tongmu City. If the sun sets in another 2 hours, thousands of paulownia flowers will bloom, and the entire Tongmu City will be as beautiful as a heavenly palace. That is true beauty." Xiao Hua knew what Wang Cheng was thinking. However, he only had feelings for the so-called beautiful scenery, and did not think about it. Whether it existed or not, it did not matter, and he did not care. He only wanted to use the teleportation formation of Tongmu City to leave this place. However, Fairy Hongxia was different. She was obviously moved by Wang Cheng's words, and she unconsciously looked around, as if she was thinking about the magnificent scene of paulownia flowers blooming. Her footsteps actually slowed down. At this moment, Li Zongbao had already walked in front of the 4 of them. Xiao Mao obediently took half a step back. He also knew that in such a situation, Li Zongbao could handle it much better than him. He only needed to follow behind Li Zongbao, and he would receive all the praise he deserved. Li Zongbao's cultivation level was not as high as Xiao Hua's, but he was much better at dealing with people. He had not said much, but now he said lightly, "Martial nephew Wang, it's not far from dusk now. We have heard about Tongmu City long ago. If we can see the wonderful scene of paulownia flowers blooming, this trip will not be in vain. How about this? Where is the meeting hall of Tongmu City? We'll go take a look." Hearing this, Wang Cheng was overjoyed. He hurriedly pointed in a direction and said, "Martial Uncle Li, the meeting hall is over there. If the 4 of you can move to the meeting hall of Tongmu City will definitely be honored. Only the Sentry City has a meeting hall. The meeting hall of my Dao sect is wherever the seniors are." Li Zongbao frowned and said with some displeasure, Yes, I understand." Wang Cheng was a little frightened and said hurriedly, "I will report what Martial Uncle Li said to the city lord. There's no need for that. This is a matter of your Tongmu City. I'm just saying what I think." Li Zongbao said calmly as he walked. That's right. Who is the city lord of Tongmu City? I don't think I've heard of him before." Xiao Hua only remembered now. Although he was wary of Chun Yi and had always been guessing, he had never heard of any news about the city lord of Tongmu City. Therefore, Xiao Hua whispered to Fairy Hongxia. Hearing Xiao Hua's message, Fairy Hongxia did not find it strange this time. She also replied, "Xiao Hua, the city lord of Tongmu City is called Qing Liuzi. He is usually very mysterious, and not many cultivators have seen his real face. Perhaps because of his arrogance, he said that only nascent soul masters and above can see him in Tongmu City. Therefore, I don't know anything about Qing Liuzi." "Oh, is that so?" Hearing this, Xiao Hua was even more puzzled. Based on the arrangements of Tongmu City, the city lord of Tongmu City should be someone with a wide range of connections. How could he be so arrogant? What is the cultivation level of this senior Qing Liuzi? Xiao Hua asked curiously. This concubine doesn't know. "Husband, you should ask senior brother Li." Fairy Hongxia smiled apologetically. Her gaze fell on the strange flowers and plants beside her. Chapter 2966. The roads of Twilight Tong City were ingenious. After entering the city, one would go straight up the mountain ridge with a slight curve. However, the roads below one's feet were extremely smooth and straight. Beside these roads were all sorts of shops, inns, taverns, and tea-houses. They were not arranged in rows like in other large cities. Instead, they were uneven, with some high and some low. Rather than saying that they were standing tall, it would be more accurate to say that they were growing healthily like spiritual trees. There were also many flowers that seemed to be blooming among the spirit flowers. It was truly an eye-opener for Fairy Wuxia. Although there were many people on the roads, everyone seemed to be smiling. Clearly, they were intoxicated by the beautiful scenery of Twilight Tong City. It was very different from other big cities. Senior Qingliuzi. He is indeed very mysterious. I don't know what he looks like either. Hearing Xiaohua's question, Li Zongbao muttered to himself before replying like Fairy Wuxia. However, he continued. However, I heard from my master that Senior Qingliuzi is good at business and scheming. He is closer to cultivators who are useful to him than his own father. However, he is even more distant than cultivators who are strangers to him. Li Zongbao's analogy made Xiaohua laugh. He could not help but laugh out loud. Wang Cheng turned his head in confusion. Xiaohua smiled and pointed at a spirit flower that was about to bloom. This Xiao seems to have seen a spirit stone growing out of that spirit flower. It can't be. Wang Cheng was stunned. He looked at it with all his might and asked in confusion. Senior Uncle Xiao, did you see wrongly? That is just an ordinary Ling Mian. And I think I saw wrongly. Xiaohua waved his hand and said, how can that spirit stone be Ling Mian's father? Wang Cheng was even more confused by Xiaohua's words. Fairy Wuxia and Xiao Mao were also stunned. It's fine, it's fine. Xiaohua waved his hand and waited for Wang Cheng to turn around. He then transmitted Li Zongbao's words to the two of them. Fortunately, the two of them were already prepared. Otherwise, they would definitely laugh out loud like Xiaohua. Li Zongbao shook his head slightly as he looked at the two of them who were trying to hold back their laughter. Then he transmitted his voice again. Junior brother Xiao, don't underestimate Senior Liuzi. However, his cultivation is the highest among the city lords of the 7 cities. Now he had actually reached the middle stage of the nascent soul stage. He seems to be even more powerful than the sect leader of your esteemed sect. Hiss, hearing this, Xiaohua gasped. He was now at the early stage of the nascent soul realm. He had a deeper understanding of the difference between the early stage and the middle stage of the nascent soul realm. He knew that there was a huge gap between the two realms. For a cultivator who had a lot of work to do, being able to reach the early stage of the nascent soul realm was already a great fortune. But Qingliuzi was able to reach the middle stage of the nascent soul realm again. The 3,000 Great Tao is indeed true. Xiaohua sighed. Everyone has their own destiny. The heavenly Tao is equally ruthless. Even if you have thousands of mistakes and thousands of shortcomings, as long as you wholeheartedly follow the Tao, the heavenly Tao will always leave a smooth path in front of you. However, if you have no Tao in your heart, even if you have thousands of good deeds, the door of the heavenly Tao won't open for you. Yes, that's right. Li Zongbao also sighed. When I heard this that day, I also sighed for a long time. I feel that this character is really incomparable to the realm and cultivation. Alas, Xiaohua shook his head slightly. He knew that he was only at the gold core realm, and it was extremely inappropriate to talk about the nascent soul realm senior. However, he still couldn't help but think about it. There was a difference between good and evil people, but the heavenly Tao didn't. If evil people could become immortals and good people fell, then what would the immortal realm become? What would the cultivation realm become? Thinking of this, Xiaohua was suddenly shocked again. The cultivation of the Tao sect doesn't care about good or evil, nor does it care about character. However, the Buddhist sect cares a lot about good and evil. There is a saying that good will have good results and evil will have evil retribution. A person's cultivation should plant a good tree, and only by planting good causes can there be good results and good retribution. Could it be that this deviation in cultivation caused the conflict between the Tao sect and the Buddhist sect? Caused the destruction of the Buddhist sect? But if that's the case, is the Buddhist sect's objective really different from the heavenly Tao? Is it really wrong? Even the Confucian cultivators who only cultivated the qi of righteousness in their chests and faced the heavenly Tao with a pure heart were also destroyed by the Tao sect. Their cultivation is also wrong? Xiaohua was somewhat at a loss. Do they really want to be the strongest? Do they really not care about good or evil, about the lives of others, and only care about their own cultivation? Only care about becoming immortals? Such immortals. Are they really the immortals in my heart? It had to be said that if the Tao sect cultivators had such thoughts, no one would think of it. Perhaps if they had such thoughts, they would be instantly killed by themselves or their own masters. Only a cultivator like Xiaohua, who had tried many kinds of cultivation methods, could have such doubts and doubts. Helplessness, sometimes it was really helplessness. If he knew that this disciple of his actually doubted the Tao sect's cultivation method, he would probably immediately come out of seclusion. However, even if he appeared helplessly in front of Xiaohua, what could he do? Other than helplessness, what else could he do? Martial uncles, please come this way. That is the meeting hall of my Twilight Tong City. At this moment, Wang Cheng's voice rang out, pulling Xiaohua out of his deep thoughts. When he looked in the direction Wang Cheng was pointing, he couldn't help but be slightly stunned. His somewhat astonished eyes flashed with an expression of not knowing whether to laugh or cry. In the front left of the crowd, in the midst of the flowers, there was an oval-shaped bird's nest on top of hundreds of thick spiritual trees. The nest was completely built with fist-sized branches, and there was an extremely large gap between the branches. Through the gap, one could vaguely see the brilliance of the bird's nest. On top of the thick spiritual trees, large green talismans slowly flowed. These green talismans were like flowers and grass, and they corresponded with the surrounding spiritual trees and spiritual grasses. It was as if the grasses and trees on the mountain range were floating above the bird's nest. This bird's nest was admittedly huge, but its color and brilliance seemed to blend together with the many grasses and trees. It really seemed as if a huge bird had built its nest here. This is the meeting hall. Even Li Zongbao's face showed an expression of not knowing whether to laugh or cry, and even his voice changed a little. If the meeting hall was a bird's nest, then what about the Book of Heroes in the meeting hall? Wouldn't it be a bird's nest? Wang Cheng said in a deadpan manner. Martial uncles, please know that this is the meeting hall of my Twilight Tong City. It is also the building of my Twilight Tong City, that is second only to the City Lord's mansion. Usually, the auction for the face-retaining pill in my Twilight Tong City is usually held in this meeting hall. Li Zongbao withdrew his astonishment and nodded slightly. The buildings in Twilight Tong City were really strange. Building a bird's nest was already giving them face, but if they really built something strange, it would be hard to say. The meeting hall was in the shape of a bird's nest, so entering and leaving the meeting hall naturally had to be like a bird's nest. Seeing many Qi refining disciples activating their flying talismans and many foundation establishment cultivators summoning their transcendence energy to fly into a star-shaped entrance, Xiaohua smiled and pointed his hand. It seems there are also many cultivators who want to enter the bird's nest. He, of course, Wang Cheng said with a smile. Right now, we are already in the second stage of the Great War of Tao and Sword. Because the nascent soul masters of the three cultivation countries have already participated in the war. There are many battles that have yet to begin, but the outcome is already known. Therefore, the number of cultivators who come to my meeting hall to participate in the meeting has decreased by a lot. As early as a few years ago, when all of you were still fighting at the front line, the meeting hall was filled with people and was much livelier than it is now. Xiaohua nodded. He understood that in the first stage of the Great War of Tao and Sword, the strength invested by the Taoist sect was equivalent to the strength invested by the sword cultivators. Moreover, at that time they were not very familiar with each other, so it was extremely difficult to guess the outcome of the battle. In particular, the sword cultivators had Jiu Xiao's arrangement and LV Ruochang's command. This was definitely beyond the expectations of all the Taoist sect cultivators. The situation of the battle was like a cloud of fog, complicated and unpredictable, which was really suitable for gambling. Now that the higher-ups of the Taoist and sword sects were participating in the war, there were only so many sword transformation cultivators and nascent soul cultivators. The sword cultivators were obviously at a disadvantage in terms of strength, so they could only win by relying on the element of surprise. It could even be said that after more than 10 years of fighting, the last sentence was in Sentry City. Therefore, the situation in the second stage was extremely clear on the surface, but if it was used for gambling, it would be somewhat difficult. No wonder Wang Cheng said that there were fewer people entering and leaving. There has been no news for 1.5 months. The number of cultivators waiting here. I'm afraid there will be fewer. Xiao Mao looked at the entrance and said, "Senior, please." Wang Cheng took out a flight talisman again and activated it with his magic power. Then he said respectfully, "I'll lead the way." Wait a moment. At this moment, Li Zongbao stopped and turned to look at Fairy Hongxia, but in fact he was transmitting his voice to Xiao Hua. "Junior brother Xiao, should we go in?" Based on Wang Cheng's words, there are many cultivators inside. If we go in, we might be recognized by others. Xiao Hua understood Li Zongbao's meaning. He knew that Li Zongbao was afraid that he would not be willing to show his face in public, so he asked this question. Xiao Hua thought for a while and felt bitter. During the trip to the sword domain, he had killed dozens of illusory swordsmen. Although Qin Heng and other second-grade sword transformation swordsmen were killed by him, they died because of him. Sooner or later, the news would spread to the country of Xi. In particular, some cultivators had seen what he did in Million Mountains. Although they could not return to the 3 kingdoms of cultivation in a short period of time, they would come back sooner or later. It was only a matter of time before his true strength was exposed. Since that was the case, he could only prepare for a rainy day. He had to make an impact early and establish his reputation in the 3 kingdoms of cultivation. As for the cultivation of the Buddhist sect, Xiao Hua had already taken a look at the soul technique of the Huta Stockade's Elder Wu. It was 100 times more profound than the secret technique given by Han Zhu. Xiao Hua was confident that even nascent soul cultivators would not be able to see through it. As for spirit-severing cultivators, would they even take Xiao Hua seriously? Chapter 2967. Let's go in and take a look. Xiao Hua faintly transmitted his voice. If we don't enter this place, not to mention that others will use this against us and say that we look down on Tongmu City. Given the character of Tongmu City's city lord, I'm afraid he will be displeased with us. Now that we are only foundation establishment cultivators, it's better to be careful. Alright. After getting Xiao Hua's approval, Li Zongbao said, "Martial nephew Wang, you lead the way." Yes. Although Wang Qing did not know why Li Zongbao asked Fairy Hongxia, he did not dare to think too much about it. He agreed and flew forward. Xiao Hua and the others followed Wang Cheng to the entrance of the bird's nest. There were more than a dozen aura refining disciples standing guard there. There were also 3 foundation establishment city guards standing to the side with grave and stern expressions. They were on full alert. Although Wang Cheng was leading the way, Xiao Hua and the others were still required to remove the camouflage before they could enter. Li Zongbao and the others naturally did not agree. However, after Wang Cheng's helpless voice transmission, the foundation establishment city guards' faces were filled with shock. After seeing the token of Li Zongbao's special task force in the meeting hall, the 3 foundation establishment city guards immediately bowed respectfully and invited the 4 to enter the bird's nest. These cultivators are some nascent soul cultivators? After Li Zongbao and the others entered the bird's nest, and Qi Refinement Cultivator, who had a close relationship with the foundation establishment city guards, quietly transmitted his voice. After all, in this bird's nest-like meeting hall, apart from nascent soul cultivators, even late golden core cultivators could not wear the camouflage. They are not nascent soul cultivators. The foundation establishment cultivator said respectfully. If those cultivators came, how could the city lord not accompany them? Do you think that Wang Cheng, a level 12 Qi refinement cultivator, could accompany them? Then how could they enter the meeting hall wearing the camouflage? The Qi refinement cultivator almost forgot to transmit his voice. If Deacon Chen knows about this, we will not be able to escape punishment. Not to mention Deacon Chen, even if the city lord himself came, he would definitely not be punished. Another Foundation Establishment cultivator laughed. Because, although they are only Foundation Establishment cultivators, they are worthy of the treatment of nascent soul cultivators. How is that possible? The aura refining disciple seemed to have walked into a dead end. He didn't understand the meaning of these words. An alert disciple next to him suddenly exclaimed, "Martial Uncle Wang, could it be that they are Shu? It's good that you know." Martial Uncle Wang hurriedly said, "They naturally have their reasons for not announcing their arrival." Think about it, if the cultivators in the assembly hall knew that they were here, then wouldn't they go crazy? Sigh, what a pity. I can't see the faces of the 4 martial uncles with my own eyes. That disciple said regretfully. Haven't you seen enough of the appearances of the 4 fellow Taoists in the conference hall? The disciple who spoke first finally understood and spoke with a hint of jealousy. That was just an illusion. How could it be so real? They were the seniors who had killed the 3rd-grade illusory sword and obtained the first bounty. Just thinking about it makes this subordinate's blood boil. They are simply too brave. They have truly made our Tao sex cultivators too proud. That's right. Their honor was obtained with blood and lives. The Foundation Establishment City Guard's gaze was also deep. If we were there, I'm afraid that we would have been buried in a foreign land. In order to kill the sword cultivators, this subordinate will not hesitate even if my body is smashed to pieces. That disciple said vehemently. Good. Well said. The Foundation Establishment City Guard nodded vigorously. This old man will remember your words. Whenever there is such a good opportunity, this old man will think of you first. Not to mention these Dawn Tree City Guards who were discussing behind Xiaohua and the others. When Xiaohua and the others stepped into the assembly hall, they were greeted by a huge space. The inside of this space was very similar to what they saw outside. It was really in the shape of an oval-shaped bird's nest. However, this bird's nest was really big. It was several times bigger than the assembly hall in Sky Patrol City. However, what attracted Xiaohua's attention was not the size of the assembly hall, but the images on the inner walls of the bird's nest. This bird's nest was about 1,000 feet tall, and the colorful light screen occupied the inner wall of the bird's nest. Moreover, the light curtain was divided into 2 layers. Each layer was about 100 feet high. In other words, the images on each layer were about 100 feet high. At a glance, there were many huge images that came into view. Xiaohua might not be able to see the images of the others, but at the bottom layer, there was a female cultivator who was stepping on a red flying cloud and holding a red silk in her hand. Above her head, there was a phoenix celestial body with its wings spread. Wasn't that Fairy Hongxia? And opposite Fairy Hongxia's image, there were several sword cultivators in front of her who were fleeing in panic on their flying swords. Every single one of these sword cultivators had ugly faces, and their faces were filled with fear. With a single glance, one could tell that Fairy Hongxia was extremely valiant and ferocious. Xiaohua, you are over there. Unlike Xiaohua, Fairy Hongxia saw Xiaohua at a glance. Without waiting for Xiaohua to take a closer look at the images of Fairy Hongxia, she immediately called out. Xiaohua followed Fairy Hongxia's finger. Sure enough, behind the 10 different huge images of Fairy Hongxia, there was also the majestic appearance of Xiaohua stepping on thunder. However, this Xiaohua's hand was not holding the wishful staff, nor the seal of turning the sea, but a huge fire net. On the fire net, there were faint threads of lightning, and within the threads of lightning, there were many fire crows dancing. In front of the fire net, there was also a sword cultivator who was fleeing in panic. That sword cultivator's sword armor was already surrounded by flames, and his flying sword seemed to have been shattered. How could it be the fire crow net? Xiaohua was slightly stunned, and then he came to an understanding. Of course, Xiaohua utilized numerous magic treasures in the battle between the Dao Sword Sect and the Dao Sword Sect. Yet practically no one had seen a single one of them. Even if someone had seen one, I presume that person had probably perished in the battle. And if Tongmu City wanted to know about Xiaohua's magic treasures, they could only get information from the Imperial Thunder Sect. This fire crow net was naturally obtained from the Shocking Thunder Palace, right? This Tongmu City is quite capable. I don't seem to have used this fire crow net much, right? Xiaohua chuckled. Just as he was about to say something, his expression changed slightly. That's right, following the transformation of the illusion. Another image of Xiaohua quickly appeared in the distance. In this image, the fire crow net in Xiaohua's hand had already changed, turning into the appearance of the Great Wisdom Sword. This Great Wisdom Sword had smashed onto a sword cultivator's flying sword, smashing it into pieces. Damn it. Xiaohua couldn't help but curse inwardly. This Qingliuzi is really harmful. I don't know what other secrets this guy has found out about me. But looking further, Xiaohua was relieved. The next few images were all of Li Zongbao. Li Zongbao was holding the glittering immortal piercing whip, majestically killing in all directions. He had practically beaten all the sword cultivators until they pissed their pants in terror. Then there was Xiao Mao. Xiao Mao was still holding the universe ring in his hand. Although he wasn't as majestic as Li Zongbao, he still had a righteous and awe-inspiring look on his face. He was like a lone hero charging into a group of swords. The universe ring overflowed with splendor, stepping on many broken swords. He was really impassioned. After Xiao Mao's image, there were many images of disciples from other sections. They were all vivid and lifelike. Xiaohua recognized some of them, but there were also many that he didn't recognize. Presumably, they were all meritorious officials in the war. After a few glances, Xiaohua once again focused his attention on the upper layer. He saw that the images of the upper layer were slightly different from those of the lower layer. Each and every one of them appeared somewhat dignified, and the killing intent on their faces was somewhat less. After seeing the familiar images of Taoist Jingru and Taoist Miyu, Xiaohua understood. The upper layer should be a record of the nascent soul masters, while the lower layer should be a record of the meritorious officials in the war. Wang, a low rumbling sound suddenly sounded, and the light and shadow on the inner wall of the bird nest suddenly changed. Wang Cheng, who was at the side, anxiously said, "For martial uncles, please wait for a moment." "Oh, is there something strange?" Li Zongbao frowned and asked. "No." Wang Cheng smiled and shook his head. He pointed to an extremely far distance and said, "For martial uncles, please take a look." Following Wang Cheng's finger, in the distant light and shadow, a sword flew over at an extremely fast speed. On top of that flying sword stood an arrogant and unruly sword cultivator. Qin Jian? Xiaohua saw the sword cultivator's face at a glance, and he suddenly understood in his heart. Sure enough, immediately after, Li Zongbao, Xiao Mao, and Xiaohua appeared in midair around the flying sword. They surrounded Qin Jian in a triangular formation, and after a desperate struggle, Qin Jian finally self-detonated and died under the three's magic weapons. Xiaohua, Xiao Mao, and Li Zongbao looked at each other in dismay. To be honest, this illusion could not be called unreal. It was created according to Li Zongbao's report, and according to what was written on the order of commendation. But how could the real battle be so childish? Qin Jian was a third-grade illusory swordsman. How could he be killed by 3 Foundation establishment cultivators? Lies are lies after all. They cannot stand up to scrutiny. Seeing that the 3 of them were greatly magnified in the entire nest, Xiaohua was the first to think. Even though the 3 of us have exaggerated this matter to the heavens, when the real thing appears, it is far from what we thought it was. Luckily, after that there were a few more battles, including the 4-side sword formation, the 10-direction annihilation formation, etc. Fairy Hongxia, Li Zongbao, and Xiao Mao's small team also broke through the 4-side sword formation. This battle situation was very real, and it also covered up the lie of Xiaohua, and the rest killing Qin Jian. Phew, Xiaohua was secretly relieved. After all, if he could accept it in his heart, those who did not know would definitely think that it was real, right? Unfortunately, before Xiaohua's little heart could calm down for a moment, there was a clear cry that seemed to shake the entire nest. Another 1,000 feet large phoenix Dharma body swooped down from high above. A blurry figure similarly descended like a deity. Xiaohua knew with a single glance that this was definitely the image of a terrifying phoenix. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.